CD 4.
Helena went to Jilly, as if to embrace her. But Jilly kept her arms by her side, refusing a hug from her daughter for possibly the first time in her life. "I'll ring you," Helena said, and walked out of the kitchen, leaving the soup still steaming. Tears were pouring down Helena's face as she drove back to her studio. She felt as awful as she could feel, given that nobody had died. Jago came across when he saw her getting out of her car. "Not go well," he said, taking in Helena's tear-streaked face and tragic expression. "As badly as it could have gone, given that we didn't actually come to blows. I was as tactful as I could be, but Mum was just devastated. I could have tipped a barrel of water over her and should have been less shocked. Honestly, Jago, I think I made a terrible mistake telling her. I should have just kept it all to myself. She'll never want to speak to me again." Jago came forward and took her into his arms, pressing her face into his old Guernsey jumper. It was dusty, a bit smelly, and scratched her face. She didn't ever want to move away. "Look, it seems terrible now, but you and your mum love each other. You'll be friends again in no time. It's just the shock of it. When she gets used to the idea of it all, she'll think about it and realise you only did it for the best." "I know," Helena told his jumper, "but I've shattered her dreams. And for what? If she loves him, she's going to stay with him. It's just me she'll hate." "Come into the house and have a cup of tea," said Jago. "You're busy. You haven't time for tea." Reluctantly, Helena let go of Jago's jumper. She'd been unaware of clutching it. "If I haven't got time to give a friend a cuppa when they're in a state, we might as well give up. Come on." He put his arm round Helena's shoulders and took her into the house. "I'm so sorry to cry all over you like that," said Helena, sitting down at the kitchen table. "I hope I haven't got snot on your jumper." "My jumper would be honoured. Besides, it's had far worse. Fish guts being one example." "Oh, yuck!" Helena had stopped sniffing now and felt bizarrely better for her cry. "I know," he said. "I had a job on a fishing boat one summer, and I kind of liked the uniform, so I kept it." Helena nodded, not knowing what to say. "Now," he went on, pushing a mug of tea towards her, "tell me what Jilly said." When Helena had finished, he said, "So you didn't even eat your soup? You must be hungry." "Not really. I've lost my appetite. The tea is good, though. I should go anyway." "I expect you want to finish sorting out your loom." "Yes, but I've also got a room to look at for me to live in, for when I have to move out of my studio. It's in a shared house at the top of town. Not huge and quite expensive for what it is, but okay. I'm probably way out of order here, but why don't you live with me? There's a room at the end of this house that is finished, near the bathroom, and I'd let you have it for nothing. Because you're a mate," he added, possibly aware she was about to protest. "But if I say I've moved in with you, everyone will think we're a major item and not, 'It's early days yet, who knows how it will turn out.'" "Just tell them you want to stay close to your loom and not share a house at the top of town?" Helena nodded. "That could work." He laughed. "I do love the way you've defined our relationship, by the way." "I've got it," said Helena. "If I pay rent, it makes perfect sense. Then they can think what they like." She studied him. "Are you sure? You see enough of me as it is." "I could never see enough of you," he said, and then added, "Joking." Negotiating a rent that was satisfactory to both of them took a little while. Helena wanted to pay Jago what she would have paid for a room anywhere else. Jago insisted that anywhere else would be more comfortable, if less convenient. Eventually, they reached a compromise that they could both live with. When they had moved Helena's things over to her new room, she said, Now, I'm going to cook you supper to thank you for taking me in. But it has to be chili, as it's my signature dish. I didn't inherit my mother's cooking skills, I'm afraid, but my chili is good. You don't have to, Jago began. Yes, I do, said Helena quickly. It's what I'd do if I wanted to get on with my new housemates. No reason why you should miss out, just because we're friends. Chapter 15. The moment she was on her own, Jilly stopped being furious and became devastated again. She didn't know what to do with herself, or what to do with the information Helena had given her. It was like a bomb, only there was no handy bomb disposal unit she could call. She'd never known Helena to be wrong about anyone when she'd recognised them, but there was always a first time. She put the kettle on for tea, but then didn't fancy any. She cleared up the soup and scones and wanted to cry for being so horrible to Helena. But she didn't feel ready to apologise to her. Ulysses the cat, finding her unexpectedly still, jumped on her lap. She stroked him for a bit, until he started kneading her with his claws, and the hairs which floated up from his lavish coat made her sneeze. In the end, she went out into the garden and cleared a bed she'd been thinking of redoing for some time, although she hadn't decided what she wanted to do with it. Ulysses came with her, trying to imply that gardening had been his idea all the time. She'd always liked gardening, and hers looked wonderful in the spring. Little daffodils bloomed next to miniature irises and grape hyacinths, drifts of yellow and blue like water and sunshine. That had been her plan when she planted them, but now, although she still found them pretty, their loveliness enhanced her sadness instead of cheering her up. She and Helena hardly ever fell out. It was heartbreaking. However, she felt better when she came indoors and decided to do what was so often the best thing. Nothing. She would carry on as normal, and the right decision would occur to her. And as Leo was coming to dinner to plan their trip to Vienna that evening, she could distract herself with cooking. She was doing slow-roasted pork belly because Leo had once mentioned liking it, and it was going to be perfect. In the kitchen, Jilly had control, and right now, this was a great comfort to her. All the time she cooked, she thought about Leo, and all the time she wondered what difference, if any, Helena's information made to her feelings. As she scored the pork fat with a Stanley knife she kept for the purpose, she realised she hadn't actually heard the details. It was perfectly possible that Leo had got caught up himself in some scam or other without being aware of it, and he had just been brought down by others. But then, unexpectedly, the vision of the car on the wrong side of the road hurtling towards her came into her head. It had given her nightmares for months. Could she love a man who drove so dangerously? But it had happened years ago. He didn't seem to drive dangerously now. A bit fast, perhaps, but Jilly thought that about pretty much everyone, including Helena. And so what if he'd done time in prison? People were allowed second chances. Of course they were. And abandoning someone you loved because they'd made a mistake in their youth was not only unkind, it was ridiculous. As Jilly peeled potatoes, she pushed away the thought that Leo hadn't been that young when he'd nearly killed her. She'd been the mother of a university student herself. While they hadn't ever talked about their ages, she guessed he was a few years older than she was. But still, she was going to ignore everything that Helena had told her. Jilly set a small table and chairs in the sitting room. Leo wasn't the sort of man who'd want to eat in the kitchen, and the dining room was far too large for dinner à deux. But a little table in the window embrasure, and the fire lit to add warmth and sparkle to the evening, would be perfect. If she had only 2 guests who wanted dinner, she put them there, and everyone enjoyed it. She polished the glasses and opened the wine. Leo had offered to bring wine, but she had protested and brought some herself. She felt confident in her choice because she'd met William in Waitrose, and he had helped her find one that had been praised in the Sunday Times. She was very happy with her meal by the time it was ready. small clafoutis of vegetables in individual ramekins to start. The belly of pork was a substantial dish. Then the pork with amazing crackling, mashed potato that had been through the ricer and was as smooth as silk, softened with an indecent amount of butter, and some green beans. Then for pudding, she just had a simple orange salad with chips of caramel. It was all about the pork. The rest were just grace notes to the main event. In spite of her determination to put everything Helena had told her out of her head, there was a touch of anxiety in the excitement she felt at the prospect of seeing Leo. One of the many things she liked about him was that he always arrived when he said he would, and he did tonight, with a bottle of wine under his arm. "Hello, you," he said, kissing her on both cheeks. "Hello, Leo," she said. "Come on in. It's so lovely to see you." Being with him was very reassuring. He was a solid presence, and it was easier to forget all she'd heard about him when he so obviously wasn't a jailbird. Whether or not he drove too fast was less clear. "I brought you this. I know I said I wouldn't, but I couldn't resist." Jilly looked at the bottle and laughed. "It was on offer at Waitrose. I got a bottle too. Now that's a good omen." "Why would we need a good omen?" he asked. "Oh, you know, it's just something you say." Jilly took the bottle. "Come and sit by the fire. It's a chilly evening. You know what they say. As the days get longer, the days get colder, or some such. What would you like to drink?" "A glass of that sherry I brought you would be nice." He paused. "Have one too. It will help you relax. You seem a bit on edge this evening." "Do I? Just worrying about the meal, I suppose. I'll go and get the sherry." Jilly wasn't remotely worried about the meal. She knew it was going to be perfect, but she was agitated. In spite of telling Helena she didn't care about anything she'd told her, except perhaps the part about Leo being the man in the car on the wrong side of the road. It wasn't true, and she thought about little else. Sherry consumed, some fairly normal conversation enjoyed, Jilly went to get the starter. She released the little ramekins onto warm plates and was pleased to see the batter was perfectly set. She'd eaten the dish in France once and had been pleased to find a recipe. Leo had filled both their glasses with wine and for once ignored the jug of water that was also on the table. How was he getting home? Jilly wondered. She had no guests in that night and had deliberately kept this evening free so she could easily put Leo up if he wanted to stay. But would he want his own bedroom, or would he want to share hers? In spite of him being so ardent in many ways, he hadn't actually kissed her properly yet. She didn't know if he was biding his time. She really hoped that was it, or didn't fancy her. She herself had decided their trip to Vienna was the time to pursue their relationship further. "This is very delicious," said Leo after a couple of mouthfuls. "I'm so glad you like it. We're having belly of pork next, so I wanted to do something light." "My favourite." He paused. "Not the sort of thing your daughter-in-law Cressida would ever cook." A slight concern that she kept forgetting about came into Jilly's head. "I'm sure you told me." She wasn't sure, but she said it anyway. "Did you meet Cressida and Martin at mine that time we all had Sunday lunch? Or did you know them before?" He hesitated, just a fraction too long for her peace of mind. "I met them here, of course." It didn't ring true, but Jilly was determined not to spoil her evening. "So, what news of Vienna?" she said later, when they were halfway through their pork, and the best way to achieve the perfect crackling, which this definitely was, had been discussed at length. "Oh, all booked," said Leo. "I'll give you the details after supper. I can guarantee you're going to absolutely love what I've planned. More wine?" He topped up her glass and then his own. For whatever reason, Jilly was not enjoying Leo's company as much as usual. Previously, she had revelled in the sound of his voice. It was beautifully modulated, and he was extremely well read and full of information about, it seemed, everything, from gardening to ancient Greek literature and everything else in between. She knew she didn't always listen to what he was saying and just let his voice wash over her. But now she was paying attention, waiting for a suitable gap for her to say something. "Would you like some more?" she asked eventually, after a brief lecture on the life and works of Gustav Klimt, which they would see when they went to Vienna. He patted his stomach, currently covered in very fine wool tailoring. He cared a lot about his clothes, and while Jilly liked clothes too, she did wonder at his choice of tie sometimes. Now was one of those times. The pattern was a bit too busy for her.
"Just a soupçon more would be lovely. I should probably decline, as I'm sure you've got a wonderfully rich chocolate pudding for afterwards, but my greed has got the better of me."
While Jilly was in the kitchen refilling his plate, she wondered if it was greed that had got him into trouble before. She also worried that he'd be disappointed by the pudding, even though she'd taken such care to remove the pith from the oranges and had been liberal with the Grand Marnier. The caramel was perfect too. So often people didn't cook the sugar for long enough, in Jilly's opinion, so you didn't get the proper caramel taste. Aware she was spending longer in the kitchen than was strictly necessary, she took Leo's plate back through to the sitting room, the heated-up jus in a separate jug.
"You are the most amazing cook," said Leo, gazing fondly at her. "And yet somehow you've managed to maintain your good figure. You're not super slim, of course, but still perfectly presentable. Figure-wise,"
he added quickly, possibly feeling Jilly stiffen at his faint praise. "Thank you," she said, not sure if she was thanking him for his praise for her cooking or her perfectly presentable figure. She watched him eat, wondering if his rather flamboyant eating style would begin to grate on her eventually. She'd once known a woman who'd ended a relationship because she couldn't bear the way her beloved ate boiled eggs. And as her mind strayed into irrelevant thoughts and memories, she wondered if they were all because Helena had put doubt in her mind.
"So, dear Jilly,"
he put a well-manicured hand on hers,
"what cocoa and cholesterol-filled delight have you in store for us?"
"Actually, pudding is very simple and not really very fattening. Maybe I had our figures in mind when I planned it." She didn't see why the prosperous curve of his stomach should be overlooked, while her own curves could be commented on.
"Oh, well, very sensible, I'm sure."
"Not sensible," Jilly said firmly. "Delicious. I'll go and get it." As she had taken the trouble to dig out her very pretty green glass dishes with stems to serve the oranges in, she wasn't going to have dessert disparaged.
"Well,"
said Leo when she put the oranges with caramel in front of him.
"Not quite what I had in mind, but actually it will go nicely after the pork."
"Thank you," said Jilly, irritated. "That's what I thought."
"I don't suppose you have a pudding wine, do you? I'm partial to a nice muscat at a time like this."
Jilly got up and went to the fridge. She knew about his predilection for pudding wines. He'd mentioned it before. She had poured them both a glass in her favourite vintage sherry glasses. She had stopped worrying about whether or not he was over the limit. She had empty bedrooms she could put him in. She didn't offer coffee. She was tired.
"This is what we're doing,"
he said, having produced a file from his briefcase.
"First, a cab to the airport. Saves all that airport parking annoyance, although I did consider valet parking. We have a civilised flight time. I've booked business class. A bit extravagant, but you're worth it. And then a really nice hotel. Here it is."
He produced his laptop and found the site. "Oh my goodness, that hotel is amazing," said Jilly. "It must be fantastically expensive."
"I hope you're not going to offer to pay your share, Jilly. I wouldn't allow it."
Jilly swallowed, then took another sip of muscat. Her glass had been refilled. "Okay," she said, encouraging him to go on.
"Then I thought we'd have a car for the first day to take us around to the major sites. Of course, we'll visit the opera and the Spanish riding school." Is there anything in the art line you'd particularly enjoy? Apart from Klimt, of course.
Actually, Leo, this is quite overwhelming.
I want you to be overwhelmed with luxury, art, culture. There are some amazing churches to visit. Sigmund Freud's house.
So how many days have you planned to stay?
5 days. That should give us enough time to eat our body weight in Sachertorte and schnitzel.
Julie's eye had been caught by the date on one of the many bits of paper. Leo, the booking is in June. I'm sure I said I couldn't go then. Let me get my diary. The time she spent getting it, although not long, was time for her to get her feelings in order. She produced the family calendar that ruled her life. Look, I have bookings. I know I told you about them.
You did, darling, he said smoothly, the first time he'd used this endearment. But I decided if we stuck to your schedule, we'd never go. You can easily cancel your visitors or get your friend to accommodate them.
Julie didn't respond. She didn't know how to. He'd arranged a truly amazing trip for them, and now she didn't want to go. It was odd, Julie thought. A couple of days ago, if Leo had done this, she'd have thought he was being wonderfully masterful, and she'd have found the whole thing very sexy. She'd have passed her bed and breakfast guests on to her friend and tried to make it up to them later. Now, she was determined not to rush into cancelling her bookings. Was it Helena's ridiculous revelations that had done it, she wondered, as she let Leo continue to talk about the cultural joys of Vienna, not having really acknowledged her doubts? Or was the dizzy, wonderful feeling that she associated with Leo always destined to be fleeting?
You don't seem to be paying attention, my love.
Julie turned to Leo. Sorry, do go on. Vienna sounds fascinating. Even if she didn't intend to go there.
I'd actually asked if you had any brandy or better port.
Julie got up quickly, the hostess within her still willing to please. Oh yes, of course. I'll get it. When she'd come back to the table, spread with maps and guidebooks, she poured him the port.
Thank you, he said. Now, after Vienna, I suggest we take the train. He paused. Now what?
He sounded impatient. He wanted his audience to pay proper attention. Sorry, I was just wondering how you were going to get home. You've had far too much alcohol to be safe to drive.
Isn't that my decision?
He said coldly. Would you like me to call you a taxi? He cleared his throat.
I was rather hoping to stay with you tonight.
He looked at her in a way that last week would have had her half fainting with lust. Sorry, but I'm absolutely chocker. Not a spare bed in the house.
Really? I haven't heard a soul, and you haven't jumped up from the table once.
Except when I've been tending to your needs, thought Julie. They're all coming in much later, by arrangement. He was silent for a few moments. Rare for him, Julie realised.
Maybe you'd better call that cab, he said at last.
Julie went to get her phone. She had a number of cab companies on favourites. As she looked through the list, she wondered if she should tell him to cancel the trip to Vienna, and decided no time like the present. She waited until the cab had arrived, however. By the way, Leo, I don't think I want to go to Vienna after all, at least not in June. It's just too inconvenient. He sighed, obviously being patient with the whims of a woman.
Why don't you sleep on it? I'll leave the information that I printed off. It's got a link to the hotel on it.
Julie smiled and nodded, feeling cowardly, but also that she'd been run over by a Savile Row-suited steamroller, and so her cowardice was justified. As he left, Julie noticed he had cat hair on the seat of his trousers. He would not appreciate that. But she'd had Ulysses a lot longer than she'd known Leo. If she had to choose between them, it would have to be Yuli. Gillian's emotions were mixed. Part of her felt she'd probably lost the silver fox that her friends envied her for having, and so was regretful. The other part hoped she had. The thought made her feel liberated. in the same way she had when she'd finally navigated the torturous divorce proceedings her ex-husband put her through. After all, Leo might be a silver fox, but he was high maintenance. She enjoyed cooking for people and loved to be appreciated. But she wondered if she would ever get to the stage with Leo that they could just eat cheese on toast in front of the telly. He probably wanted to go on a diet too, in case she got just a bit too plump to be presentable. After she had put on some music to tidy the kitchen by, she examined her feelings. Supposing she couldn't go to Vienna, how did she feel? Relieved, she realised. It wasn't that she didn't want to go. She did, but not in the high-powered, high-end way that Leo would arrange. She switched on the overfilled dishwasher. Next question. How would she feel if she never saw Leo again? This wasn't quite so clear, she realised. Part of her was definitely relieved, but part of her would wonder if she'd made the right decision. He was gorgeous by anyone's standards, and the fact that he was courting her, a middle-aged woman, was very flattering. Now she wished she'd gone for a rich and creamy chocolate dessert, instead of the lighter, diet-friendly oranges and caramel. That would have been good, something really fattening and rich to indulge in, so that the faint nausea she'd feel afterwards would match her mood. Fortunately, she'd bought some cream just in case. In case of what, she never asked herself. And although it curdled slightly when poured over the oranges, it tasted nice. After she'd eaten it and poured herself some Grand Marnier, she did the full number on the kitchen. Usually, she'd just do the minimum and finish in the morning. She much preferred cleaning in daylight. But she suspected she'd be feeling low when she came down the next morning, and having a clean kitchen might help. Before she settled down to sleep, she texted Helena, hoping her daughter hadn't taken her phone into the bedroom, as she didn't want to disturb her. "I'm not going to Vienna with Leo," she said, and added a grinning emoji. Chapter 16. Helena must have seen her mother's text early, because she was in the kitchen by 8. They hugged. "Oh God, Mum, I'm so sorry. I would never have told you all that stuff about Leo if I hadn't been really worried," Helena said, still clinging on to her mother. "I know you absolutely did it for the best, and I don't know if it was what you said or him, but I'm going off him." Helena gasped in delight. "Have you dumped him?" "No, he may dump me first." "Oh, don't let that happen," said Helena, possibly worried that Jilly might keep him. "Far better for you to do it." Jilly didn't really want to talk about this now. She wanted to make up her own mind in her own time. But she knew Helena would put pressure on her if she showed doubt. She changed the subject. "Would you like some belly of pork? You could heat it up for Jago next time you see him." Helena looked a bit guilty. "I could, and that may be quite soon." "Why?" If it hadn't been for the guilty look, Jilly would never have asked. She felt that if she wanted her privacy respected, she should respect Helena's, but she was her mother. There were a few privileges. "Because we're living together." "No, not like that. I'm renting a room in his house, for money. So we're sharing a house, really, not living together. Although we do share meals, or we have so far." Jilly smiled again, hoping she didn't look too fond and clucky for her independent daughter. "I'll give you all the pork belly then." Later, Jilly found herself in Waitrose, staring mindlessly at the chocolate display. Usually she was focused when she went shopping, had a list, knew what she wanted. But now her decision-making ability had deserted her. She still hadn't decided what to do about Leo. She became aware of someone at her elbow. It was William. "Oh, hello." "Hello." He paused. "I'd ask you how you are, but I think I know the answer." "Oh, God. Do I look awful?" "Not awful. Never that. But you don't look happy." Jilly started a smile and then decided it probably looked ghoulish and stopped.
When I feel like that, I go gliding, said William.
Do you?
Can I take you gliding? Would you like that?
At that moment, she couldn't decide what chocolate bar to buy. How could she make a decision about going gliding? I don't know. I've never been. How could I possibly tell if I'd like it?
I expect the thought makes you feel a bit apprehensive, said William. Can we find a day when I can take you to look at the glider? And, if it's sunny and you feel like it, we can go up. But if you don't fancy it, we'll just go out for lunch.
William, it's terribly kind of you, but...
I'll email you, said William. Then you can think about it and reply accordingly. I shouldn't have put you on the spot while you're shopping.
Now Jilly felt guilty. I'm sorry, it was such a kind thought, but...
It came at just the wrong moment. He smiled. I'll email you.
Then he walked off towards the wine department. Jilly watched him go. It was so kind to try to offer comfort when she was obviously suffering. On the other hand, she could have done with him not being quite so quick to notice when she put on a good layer of "I'm absolutely fine" makeup. Still, if it hadn't worked, it hadn't worked. She picked up the first chocolate that came to hand and put several bars into her trolley. Then she headed to the baking ingredients department. She saw William passing through towards the checkouts. He gave her a wave and a smile, and she smiled back. Gliding, she thought, not her sort of thing at all, which was rather a shame. Jilly was very surprised to open her front door and see Leo standing there, just after she'd put her shopping away. He had a huge bunch of flowers in his hand and a very humble expression on his face.
Forgive me for just turning up like this, but I thought you may have blocked my number, he said, and I really wanted to say how sorry I was about my behaviour last night.
Jilly opened her front door, her feelings very mixed. Come in, and there's no need for all this. He came in and put the flowers into her hands.
There was very much a need.
I'll just put these somewhere. I expect they could do with a drink before I arrange them. Leaving Leo in the hall, she went to her utility room and found a bucket. When the flowers were in water up to their necks, she went back to her unexpected guest. Her short encounter with a cold tap had been enough for her to gather her composure. Can I offer you some coffee, Leo? She asked. Having given your lovely flowers a drink, I think I should show you the same courtesy. She smiled.
Can I suggest something different? Can I suggest I take you to my house for coffee? I'd like you to see it.
The sensible part of Jilly would have said no, but her curiosity squashed common sense in a second. That would be delightful, she said. Go and make yourself comfortable in the sitting room while I get ready. Jilly wanted to suggest she took her own car, but then decided it looked a bit rude. Helena would have chided her for her inability to be rude to people, but good manners were in every fibre of her being, and Leo was making a huge effort. Saying sorry was obviously hard for him, and he was doing it with very good grace. Unusually for Leo, he didn't talk much as he drove, so when Helena rang, the call broke the silence. Jilly felt awkward talking to her daughter, because she knew Helena would not approve of what she was doing. At least Helena would understand her desire to see a possibly lovely house, but she wouldn't want the house to be Leo's. 20 minutes later, Leo drove through huge wrought-iron gates that opened with the aid of a gadget in his car. He drove up the drive and drew to a halt in front of the house. Jilly drew breath. Her own house was lovely, but this, lit perfectly by the spring afternoon sunshine, was spectacular. It was a classical Georgian house, possibly an old rectory. The garden in front was beautifully tended, and beyond the lawn there was a gate into the churchyard. Beyond that was an old church. Jilly couldn't suppress a sigh. Leo ran round the car, so he could open the passenger door. He handed Jilly out.
Come through to the kitchen. It doesn't have anything like the charm that yours has, but it is quite smart.
The kitchen was reached via a generous entrance hall, stone-flagged, light, and perfect for the tallest Christmas tree. Now it had an antique desk and chair and a chaise longue. Quite smart, as a description of the kitchen was an enormous understatement. Firstly, it was huge, and secondly, unless Jilly was very much mistaken, and she did her fair share of looking on the internet, cost the same as a decent-sized house in some parts of the country. Painted a darkish green, Farrow and Ball, Jilly recognised, it wasn't gloomy but stylish. A 4-oven Aga the same colour took up quite a lot of one wall, fitted into what had once been an inglenook, another house-sized amount of money. All around were cupboards, and, she was willing to bet, pan drawers. There was one of those taps that provided boiling or icy cold water, and a sneaky look at a tall cupboard that looked rather like an antique armoire, though not enough to make Jilly believe it was one, turned out to be a fitted larder. Jilly had always wanted a fitted larder cupboard. She had a larder, but it was damp, full of surplus kitchen gadgets. Pasta maker, ice cream maker, spiralizer, mincer, and wasn't full of decorative jars of spices. Basically, it didn't look as if it was owned by Nigella. Leo drew out a stool from the breakfast bar and invited Jilly to sit. Jilly was not a fan of high stools, but she clambered up and rested her hands on the marble island. It would be so perfect for making pastry, she thought. He made them both coffee from a complicated machine and handed Jilly a mug.
Take it with you while we do the tour. I have an appointment later, or I'd invite you to lunch.
I've got things I need to do later too, said Jilly, hoping she hadn't forgotten anything important. Every room was more lovely than the last. There was a huge, elegant drawing room, a dining room painted traditionally in deep red, and, as well as an office, a snug, and a wine cellar, there was a magnificent orangery. Jilly had a conservatory and a wine cellar, but her wine cellar was actually in the cellar, and you had to go down steep steps to get to it. This was near the dining room and kitchen, incredibly handy. "This is just so lovely," said Jilly when the tour was over and they were back in the hall.
"It's home,"
said Leo simply. Jilly suppressed a sigh. She didn't want him to see quite how impressed she was. It would make his head swell, and she didn't want him to have a problem going through doors. "Well now, I must go back to my far more humble one."
"I wanted you to see it, Jilly. Not so much to impress you, but so you'd know you wouldn't be giving up a lovely place to live if you threw your lot in with me."
"I think we're getting ahead of ourselves," said Jilly, channeling her inner playgroup leader. "But thank you." She gave Leo the sort of smile she usually kept for potentially difficult bed and breakfast guests. It never failed her.
"Let's get you home."
As they drove back through the lanes of Gloucestershire, Jilly thought about Leo's wonderful house. And the more she thought about it, the more she realised that no house, however wonderful, was better than her house. Fair Acres was home, damp patches, death watch beetle and all.
"I'll be in touch,"
said Leo, looking down into her eyes, his expression sincere. "Lovely," said Jilly, looking up into his eyes, mirroring his expression. Neither of them meant those warm looks, she realised, but she wanted to get away politely. It was only later that she wondered whether Leo did too. Chapter 17. "Listen," said Amy to Helena, on the phone later in the morning, after Helena had been to see Jilly and come away with a lot of pork. "Are you sitting down?" "I am now." Helena was telling a lie. Amy sounded so urgent that standing up seemed a better choice. It was probably that Amy had forgotten to tell her they had a workshop in Cornwall tomorrow and they had to set off immediately. "OK, well, you know the springtime show?" "Yes,"
said Helena, slightly sarcastically. The show where all the really high-end crafters display their work and it costs $1,000 to get in? Right. Well, I've got you in. Helena exhaled and perched on the edge of a very broken-down armchair that had apparently once been leather. Calm down and breathe. How can I possibly be in? It's booked up the year before it's on and, in case you missed it, costs $1,000 to enter. Am I sharing your stall? Amy had indeed booked her stall at this show the previous year. No, the stalls are tiny. There was a cancellation. I was with some other people and one of them got the call. None of them wanted to take the place, so I said yes, for you. Amy, how can I go? I'm busy enough getting stuff together for Woolly World, and I couldn't take that stuff to Springtime. It's too rustic. Quite apart from the money. I've paid for your entrance. You've got just under 3 weeks to create some suitable stock, and you'll get your money back. My money, no problem. Helena, this is the perfect opportunity for you to weave in silk. Helena wiped her arm with her forehead. Amy knew about her long-held ambition to work with silk, one she had battered away numerous times as being impractical. But at a show like Springtime, where people who would willingly spend well over £100 on a scarf visited with credit cards and a lust for luxury retail opportunities, silk would be perfect. I haven't got time. You've got nearly 3 weeks. You won't have time to make that much, but you can make samples and take orders. Hells, you've got all that silk at your mum's house and that handy little loom. But I'm known for my blankets. You can change, and you could take a few of your best blankets just to fill up the stall. But as I said, the stalls are tiny anyway. It'll take me 3 weeks to thread the loom. But Helena... Amy was talking soothingly now, as if her friend were a traumatized horse. You've got all those beautiful cones of silk yarn that someone trusted you enough to donate to you. They might get eaten by clothes moths if you don't use them soon. Do moths eat silk? Definitely. Anyway, you have to do it or you'll never be able to pay me back my £1,000. The conversation continued for a while. When Helena put the phone down, she noticed there was a mug of tea on the table. You are such a star. Jago nodded, acknowledging his starriness. My reward is that you tell me what that was all about. It sounded really exciting from this end. Helena sipped her tea. Okay, but it's a bit of a long story. Aren't you busy? I'm having a break. Well, when I was at art college, before I'd discovered weaving, really, there was this amazing woman. She was in her 50s, and I think I was missing Mum a bit, and she took me under her wing. She gave me her loom. People often give weavers looms. Although I wasn't one then, I think this woman, Julia Coombs, saw that that was where I was headed. And with the loom, she gave me a whole load of silk yarn. Beautiful colours. I longed to make something with it, but someone told me I had to start with wool. Can't even remember why now. So I put all the lovely coloured silk into bin liners and took it home, and it went in the attic, although Mum put it in plastic boxes. The loom went up there too. She gave a rueful laugh. My brother would say it's one of the reasons I don't want Mum to move, except I don't think he'd remember about my stuff in the attic. So what does Amy want you to do? Helena went on to explain about Springtime, how it had been a showcase for great artists and masters of their craft, and how utterly impossible it would be for her to get enough work done in time, even if Woodworm hadn't got to the loom and Moss to the cones of silk thread. I guess Amy could probably find someone else to take the spot. Get her bag of sand back, said Jago. A what? Said Helena, distracted for a moment. Bag of sand. Grand. Love it. But you should go and check out your mum's attic and see what's survived. Helena sighed, feeling suddenly overwhelmed by the whole thing. Amy had such faith in her. Her wonderful mentor, Julia Coombs, had such faith in her. This was her chance to show them she was up to it. Helena hadn't thought to ring her mother before she went up to visit the attic and tell her the news about the show, but her car was there, so it was slightly surprising to find the back door locked.
Helena used her key and let herself into the house. "Mum?" she called, but the kitchen had that empty feel that indicated no one was home. Ulysses the cat got up from the chair he was snoozing on and came over to say hello. "So where is she, Yuli?" Helena asked. "I'd better ring her." She dialed. "Mum, where are you? I'm at the house and I want to go into the attic." "Oh, hello, darling," said Jilly. She sounded a bit awkward, Helena thought. "Are you okay, Mum?" "Of course, I'm perfectly all right. I'm with a friend." Helena got the impression she wasn't with a close friend and wasn't entirely happy about it either. So although she knew her mother hadn't been kidnapped, she felt obliged to ask. "You haven't been taken anywhere against your will, have you? Say Ulysses if you have." Her mother's laugh was rather brittle. "Don't be silly, and be careful going into the attic if you're on your own. The ladder isn't very secure. Promise." "Is that you, darling?" Jilly called. "Yup," said Jago, appearing in the hall with a large plastic box in his arms. Jilly laughed. "Is my daughter with you, or are you burgling me?" Helena appeared with a slightly smaller box in her arms. "Is that the family silver in there?" asked Jilly. "No, it's all that silk yarn you've been keeping for me in the attic, and that small loom," said Helena. "Did I tell you? I'm going to start weaving in silk. But I thought you were working flat out for World of Wool. I'm doing something quite different now." She looked at her watch. "We must go. Jago has to be somewhere, but I'll ring you and tell you all about it. It's all Amy's fault." She followed Jago out of the back door. "And thank you so much for keeping everything in those boxes," she added. "It's completely saved me." Although Helena was trying to remember the eccentricities of the loom that was travelling in pieces in the back of Jago's pickup, along with the plastic boxes, one part of her mind was on her mother. Did she look guilty? Unsettled? Just a bit odd? "I wish I'd remembered to ask my mother where she'd been when I called her." She paused. "Did she look shifty to you?" Jago laughed heartily. "No, and I think your mum is entitled to a private life, Helly." He hadn't called her that before, and Helena took a moment to decide if she liked it or not. She concluded that she did. "I know, it's just I'm in the habit of looking out for her, and she looks out for me." "Is that what they call a codependency?" Jago inquired. Helena thought about this before acknowledging there was possibly some truth in his comment. "The trouble is, she was a bit of a wreck after the divorce. She was really strong all the way through it, but afterwards she sort of slumped for a bit. She's lucky to have a daughter like you. And I'm lucky to have a mum like her. Totally keeping the moths away from my silk thread was amazing." "So, you'll stop worrying about Jilly and just focus on your new project?" "I will." Jago stayed to help her assemble the small loom and then said, "I must dash. I'm looking for my next project. Always have to think ahead in this game." Helena was aware this gave her a slight feeling of loss. "Oh, okay. I'll see you later. Maybe I'll cook something?" "Or maybe you'll get so involved in threading your new loom, I'll cook something." Helena beamed. An even better idea. Threading the smaller loom did take forever, especially as the silk strands were so fine. She needed 125 threads per inch, and she wondered if she was mad to start doing this when she had so little time. But the time flew by, and when Jago put a monster sandwich by her, she had no idea where she was in the day. "Is that lunch or breakfast?" she asked, suddenly starving, her hunger triggered by the sight of food. "Early supper. Shouldn't you stop now? Can you still see?" Helena blinked. "Actually, you're right. I'm not functioning all that well at the moment." "Why don't you bring the sandwich into the kitchen and have a glass of wine with it, while I cook us something else?" "That sounds like a very good plan," said Helena, and picked up her plate. As she followed him through the house, she remembered he'd been on a mission too. "Did you get the property you were interested in? Were you buying or just checking out?"
Checking out. No point in buying something if it's never going to get planning permission. So, how did setting up a different loom go? Well, although it took me a while to find my way around it, and I had forgotten quite how long it takes to thread a loom with thread so fine. I reckon I can get 3 good scarf lengths out of every time I thread the loom, but I'm going to have to charge a lot to make it worth it. She took a large bite of her sandwich and sighed happily. But there's the honour of being in the show. He put down a full glass of red wine, and she knew it was her favourite. She took another bite before answering. He did have a way with a sandwich. The right bread, the right condiments, all perfectly balanced. There is, but you can't pay your bills with honour, can you? You have to have actual money as well. There's no point in creating beautiful pieces if people won't pay enough for them. But didn't Amy feel fairly sure you'd make back your £1,000 without difficulty? Amy is dreadfully optimistic. When I last looked, being optimistic wasn't considered a bad thing, said Jago. Helena looked at him, biting her lip to hide her smile. There's been optimistic and been foolhardy, and that was possibly the most delicious sandwich I've ever eaten. He nodded gravely. You were hungry. That helps. Over the following days, Helena hardly stopped weaving. Jago brought her food during the day and dragged her to the table for the evening meal. She sent her mother a text to say she was fine, but working very hard. She didn't tell her how late and long her hours were. Mothers didn't need to know everything. Chapter 18. Helena having to weave day and night was a relief to Jilly. It meant she wouldn't have time to wonder about what her mother was up to. Jilly did her bit to support her daughter, sending over casseroles, which, she realised, mostly helped Jago, who seemed to have taken on the feeding role. But she was glad not to have her daughter's beady eye upon her. While she was very nearly 100% sure she didn't want to go out with Leo anymore, she was curious. He had more or less asked her to live with him, and yet he hadn't tried to seduce her. So what was going on? She took advantage of Helena being so occupied to invite Martin and his family for Sunday lunch. She had asked Helena via text, but said, "Completely understand if you're too busy. I know how under the cosh you are at the moment." While she would have been fine if Helena and Jago had accepted, she was glad to be able to have lunch with her son without any twitches between him and his sister to deal with. She had just settled them in the sitting room with a glass of wine and elderflower and something suitable for Ismene when her phone rang. She saw it was William. "Do you mind if I answer this?" she asked, getting up so she could take the call in privacy. She knew that both Cressida and Martin would be looking at their own phones the moment she was out of the way, so didn't feel too bad. "William, how are you?" "I'm well, and I hope you are too." "I was just calling to fix up a time to take you gliding. We've got a nice high coming up tomorrow I'd like to take advantage of. It will be perfect for a first flight." Jilly sighed. "Oh, William, I'm so sorry. I do hope I didn't give you the wrong impression, but really, I don't think gliding is for me. I am an awful coward, and I don't much like flying in small planes. I'm sure to be absolutely terrified." There was a long silence, and Jilly was aware of having disappointed William. She didn't feel happy about it. "I really do believe you might love it if you just let yourself give it a shot." "It's a terribly long shot, William." She heard him sigh and felt desperate to offer him something. He'd been kind enough to want to share his hobby with her, and she turned him down because she was a coward. He deserved better. "I'd love to do something else. Bird watching, angling. Something where you don't have to defy gravity." He laughed gently. "Okay, I'll let you off gliding for now. I'll find somewhere good for bird watching. Flicking metal hooks around at the end of a line might be a bit nerve-wracking for me." She realised she was smiling. "Thank you.
Let me know. She walked back to Cressida and Martin. Ismini had found the magnetic atlas jigsaw that Jilly had brought for her. Right, can I get anyone something to nibble? Lunch won't be long.
Who was that, Mum? Asked Martin. Not Leo?
Jilly winced internally. Was she obliged to tell them about her relationship with Leo? She thought not. I was just talking to a friend about going gliding.
Gliding?
Cressida could not have been more horrified if Jilly had said she was going pole dancing.
Jilly, you would never go gliding. It would be absolutely terrifying for you. Yes, Mum, I hope you said no. It would be really unsuitable for someone of your age and state of health. There's nothing wrong with my health, said Jilly indignantly. Physically you're fine, but you are nervy, always have been, said Martin. Gliding would be the death of you.
Jilly took a couple of slow inward breaths. Excuse me, I must just check something in the oven. She walked quickly out of the room, her phone in her hand. When she was well out of earshot, she got her phone and found recents. William, I've changed my mind. I do want to go gliding after all.
Jilly, said William, are you all right? You sound a bit as if someone has forced you into saying that.
She couldn't help laughing. Really? No, don't worry. I just decided not to be such a wimp. It's turning me into an old lady before my time.
Never. I'll pick you up tomorrow, just after 8. I am so pleased about this.
Just as well she was an early riser, thought Jilly the following morning, as she sat next to William in the car, trying to focus on the burgeoning hedgerows and the beauty of the emerging spring. She was breathing deeply, concentrating very hard on not thinking about taking to the air in an unpowered vehicle. Although, to be fair, it wasn't the unpowered bit that terrified her. It was a tiny, insubstantial scrap of metal she was going to be in at the time.
We have the perfect day for it, said William. I'm confident you're going to love it.
Jilly's answering smile was rather strained. It's certainly a lovely day. How long are we likely to be in the air?
On a day like today, with a bit of luck and some good thermals, we could go for miles. But as it's your first time, I think 20 minutes will be about right.
20 minutes of her life. That wasn't a big sacrifice. And when she came down, she could say that she'd done it. She wasn't a coward and could carry on with her feet on the ground. I'm not likely to be sick, am I? William shook his head.
Not on a day like today.
Am I wearing the right clothes? He glanced across at her. She was wearing a smartened-up version of what she'd garden in. Flexible, so she could clamber in and out of the glider, and warm. Jilly was aware her fear of being cold identified her as being an older person, but it was too bad. She would never sacrifice comfort for fashion. A silk scarf added a certain aviator touch, she felt.
They seem perfect to me. You can move about freely?
Yes, I did a bit of YouTubing to look at gliders and they seem small and will take a bit of getting into, she said, pleased with herself for avoiding the words cramped and claustrophobic. I hope I'm athletic enough.
I'm sure you are.
And we wear parachutes?
Yup, partly for safety and partly because if you didn't, the seats would be really uncomfortable.
Oh, like when you lose the lining of your shoe and it's too big and unpleasant against your foot. He nodded.
I expect so.
She didn't speak for a while, aware they were getting nearer and nearer the airfield.
Don't overthink it, Jilly, said William eventually. If you really don't want to go, we won't go. It's not a big deal.
Yet having been offered a way out, Jilly realised she'd feel disappointed if she didn't give gliding a try. And Martin and Cressida would be so furious when she told them she'd been. Any amount of fear would be worth that. In spite of her bracing inner thoughts, Jilly found the age it took to drive the perimeter of the airfield agonising. She was here, she wanted to do it, and she didn't want it spun out with scenic drives around large open spaces. After seemingly hours, but in reality only a few minutes, William parked the car near the clubhouse. He held her arm encouragingly as they walked past where a number of gliders were kept under cover, towards a building where, according to the jaunty sign on the outside, the fun began. William was obviously a popular member of the club. Everyone greeted him with warm smiles, and there was the odd joke that indicated they appreciated his gentle charm. She received a fair amount of curious looks and shy nods herself, and she couldn't help asking herself how many other women he'd taken gliding. She was surprised to feel a bit jealous. She wanted it to be only her. And then she wondered why.
"Come on," said William. "Let's get it over with."
Jilly laughed. "Do I look that terrified?"
"Yes,"
said a couple of the other people.
"But no need," one went on. "You're going to love it. It's traditional to have a big cooked breakfast after your first flight," said another, "no matter what time you go up."
Jilly managed some sort of smile. Now her ordeal was nearly on her. She was getting more and more frightened. She started breathing deeply. That was always a good idea. "Is this your glider?" she said as they approached the machine, which seemed hardly bigger than a dragonfly.
"No, this belongs to the club. Mine is a single-seater. I thought it was a bit early to put you up in that."
It took Jilly a couple of seconds to realise he'd made a joke. She whimpered in response. "It's tiny," she said, looking at the space she was expected to climb into. "I swear, this must be one of the few activities where you can be claustrophobic and agoraphobic at the same time."
"Here, let me help you. You get in the front, but don't worry, you don't have to drive."
Jilly cast him a terrified glance before getting herself up and into the tiny seat. Then the Perspex top came down and clicked into place. He handed her a headset.
"Here, put this on. It means we can talk to each other."
There were a few minutes of bumping along the grass, the wings of the glider being supported by cheerful men, and then suddenly the glider took flight. Jilly gasped, breathed deeply, and gradually felt her fear being replaced by amazement. She forgot about the flimsy machine and just felt joy at being in the air in almost complete silence. Only the sound of the wind rushing past disturbed it, and Jilly found she tuned it out quickly.
"All right?"
came William's steady voice from behind her. "It's wonderful," she said. "It's like being a bird. Look, I can see the 7. My goodness, this is amazing."
"Can you see the mountains beyond the river?"
"Are they the Brecon Beacons or the Black Mountains?"
"Oh, there's a Sugarloaf. That's the Brecon Beacons, isn't it? Do you want to have a little go on the controls yourself?"
"No, thank you. I just want to swoop about, pretending to be an albatross. Though I think they mostly fly over the sea, don't they? Oh, look, there's Dead Man's Acre."
"What?"
"It doesn't matter." If William didn't know the story, she didn't want to waste time telling it to him now. Jilly became totally absorbed in looking at the fields and villages, woods and hills spread out beneath her like toys. She could see the escarpment and where it dropped to the Severn plain. There were sheep dotted about like blobs of cotton wool, cows in groups next to hedges splashed with blossom, blackthorn, she reckoned, and hawthorn. Smaller rivers, canals, and ponds flashed silver. She saw a group of deer near a spinney and sighed with happiness. The 20 minutes was over very quickly. The landing was very smooth.
"I've been on scheduled flights that bump more than that,"
said Jilly, hoping her legs hadn't stopped working while she'd been airborne.
"I really hate the airline that plays that horrid cock-a-doodle-doo thing if they arrive on time. I'd rather be late."
Her legs had weakened a bit, and she was glad of William's supportive presence as she extracted herself from the tiny space and got to the ground.
"So,"
he asked, looking down at her in a fond and proud way,
Do I gather you liked that? I loved it. I never thought I'd be able to get through it without having some sort of fit, but it was magical. Next time, we'll stay up longer. Go a bit further. So, there'll be a next time? Jilly asked, feeling like a child asking for a treat. There will be if I have anything to do with it.
End of CD 4. CD 5.
William put his arm round her, and together they walked back to the clubhouse.
That went well, then?
Asked one of the friendly men.
I loved it, said Jilly. I never thought I would. I'm such a coward about these things normally. What things? Asked the man. You know, roller coasters, scary things generally. So, are you up for a breakfast? The man went on. Jilly looked at William. I'm terribly sorry, he said. Although I hate to break with tradition, I have to get to work. I have to work too, said Jilly. Her work involved hanging sheets on the line. It seemed mundane, but when you washed as many sheets as she did, good drying days became very important. I'm so glad you liked it, said William as they neared her house. So am I, said Jilly, unaware until very recently how very important it was that she did like gliding. She wanted to like it for William's sake. And I didn't just like it, I loved it. William didn't speak, but smiled across at her when he'd parked the car. He looked very happy, Jilly realised. Have you time to come in for a coffee? She asked him. No, I've got to rush back to the office, he said, but got out of the car. He was at the passenger door in an instant and handed her out. Thank you so much for taking me, said Jilly. It was my absolute pleasure, he said, and kissed her cheek. Then he cupped it with his hand, looking into her eyes without saying any more. As she watched him disappear down the drive, she felt that these two simple gestures were somehow more meaningful and touching than the most full-on kiss would have been. Chapter 19. Jilly wanted to see William again, but didn't quite know how to go about it. She had written him a card after he had taken her gliding, taking care with it so he would realise how much she had loved the experience of seeing the landscape from the sky. He hadn't responded, and that was over a week ago. On the other hand, she was delighted that she hadn't heard from Leo. She looked at her calendar, the mocked paper family calendar that caused mirth or disapproval depending, and saw something she thought could be useful, an opportunity to see him again without looking needy. No woman ever wanted to look needy, especially one of a certain age. She composed an email inviting him to Helena's upcoming show, implying he would be a guest of the family group. Later, she would ask him for a lift. Her car was going in for a service at the perfect time. But while Jilly was writing her email, Martin rang. Hi, Mum. Just making plans for going to Hel's show. Jilly was surprised at his enthusiasm, surprised he'd planned to go even, let alone make plans. Oh, are you and Cressida going? We certainly are. We have to support the old Skin and Blister, don't we? This didn't sound like Martin. He wasn't usually bluff and friendly when he referred to anything his sister did. That's great. Really glad you can make it. She'll be thrilled. So, we'll pick you up on our way through. Oh, I was going to go early so I can give Helly a hand setting up. But, Mum, your car is due for a service. I arranged it, don't forget. It was the one helpful thing he did for Jilly, and as she could have perfectly easily done it herself, she was never that grateful. I was going to rearrange the date. Another lie. They were falling from her like beads out of a beanbag. And now you don't have to. If you want to help Hel, you can stay later and get a lift back with her. When Jilly disconnected her phone a little while later, she felt bulldozed. Martin did that to her sometimes.
She was sure he meant well, fairly sure anyway, and wished she'd been able to tell him she could make her own arrangements. She went into the kitchen and put the kettle on. Perhaps William would get in touch, offering to pick her up. Then she'd cancel Martin. It was the day of the springtime show, and it was 5 o'clock when Helena finally decided to get up. She'd woken every hour since 3 a.m. and thought she might as well avoid the agony of trying to get back to sleep again. Her alarm was due to go off at 6 anyway. Amy was going to meet her at the venue and show her the ropes before she sorted out her own stall. That was okay. Once the setting up was done, the hardest part was over. She made a quick cup of tea, trying not to wake Jago, whose bedroom was just next door, and then she surveyed her list. She'd been tempted to pack Jago's pickup. She was so grateful to him for swapping vehicles for the day, the night before, but then she worried about it raining or the truck being stolen, or indeed anything she possibly could worry about. At least now she didn't need to worry about being late. She spent longer than usual getting herself ready. Moving boxes around was likely to disturb Jago, and she preferred to do that at a less unearthly hour. There were so many boxes. There were boxes of stock, quite a few of those to her relief. There was her loom, the small one that she didn't have to assemble if the space really was as small as Amy insisted it would be. There were yarns, a selection of shuttles, beaters, combs and needles. She was aiming to make her stall look so interesting people would come over even if they had no interest whatsoever in buying a scarf. And although she had intended to only sell her silk scarves, Amy had got her in on this high-end product. She'd also brought all the rugs and throws she'd made for World of Wool, which was later in the month. She wouldn't sell them in this posh venue, she was sure, but they added life and colour to her stall. Then there were the boxes of cheese straws, tiny savoury scones, and little vol au vents her mother had insisted she brought with her. "You never know when you may need a snack," Jilly had said, "and knowing you quite well, you need one quite often." "I have my sandwiches." "You may need to offer other people a nibble." There had been a pause. "To serve with the Prosecco someone may bring." Helena hugged her mother. "Someone is so very kind, the best someone in the world." It was a really beautiful May morning. The early sunshine shone through the new green leaves, sending dappled light onto the road. As the show was nearly an hour's drive away, Helena had time to enjoy the countryside that she didn't often see quite so early, especially recently when she'd been working so hard. But as she got nearer, Helena began to get nervous. Would her products look clunky, homespun and rustic next to all the other exhibitors? She was used to exhibiting at shows where the handmade chunky look was not only permitted, it was obligatory. This was very different. Everything would be sleek, highly finished, shiny, totally professional. Like many creative people, Helena suffered badly from fear of being caught out, as if she were someone who didn't know what they were doing and just loved doing it, like any old amateur creative. Also, she wouldn't know everyone else exhibiting. At one of her usual shows, she would meet loads of old friends, fellow weavers, spinners, knitters, and producers of wool and yarn. Apart from Amy, she wouldn't know anyone at springtime. The other people could be snooty and not deign to talk to a humble worker in wool. At least the event was really well signposted, she thought with relief as she arrived. She found the exhibitor's car park near the back entrance to the building, and waiting for her was Amy. "I knew you'd be early," she said as Helena got out of the pickup. "So I made sure I was earlier. Jago not with you?" "No, he had to be somewhere else. He lent me his pickup, though." "I can see that," said Amy. Helena felt a bit on the defensive. She thought she ought to defend Jago for being an unsupportive boyfriend when he wasn't actually her boyfriend and was actually very supportive. "Let's get into the building," she said instead. Helena's stall was in a long gallery with floor-length windows all down one side. The other side was panelled wood with a stuccoed ceiling. It was incredibly beautiful and originally designed, said a helpful notice, for women of the house to walk in for exercise when inclement weather made the garden unsuitable. Helena was very pleased with her spot. It was near enough the entrance so people wouldn't be tired by the time they got as far as her, and yet not so near the door that people would just plunge on past, assuming the better items were further in. "I'm afraid I have to push off to my stall when we're set up," said Amy, during one of the trips from the pickup to Helena's spot. "But mine won't take as long. We've got time to make it all look nice." Helena smiled. She didn't say that she was perfectly capable of making it all look nice herself, because Amy was very good at it, and she was grateful for her help. And Amy had got this gig for her, and although Helena was fairly terrified at the moment, she knew she'd settle once she was in. As far as she could tell, no one was fully installed yet. She had a goldsmith on one side and a leather worker on the other. Both of her neighbours had really lovely pieces on display. "Would you like me to look after your credit card for you?" she said to Amy before she left to set up her own stall. "How else will you avoid losing control of your spending?" Amy looked longingly at a bright yellow handbag in butter-soft leather with gold buckles. It was open, revealing a contrasting silk interior. "I may have to buy that right now." "Why don't you wait until the end of the show?" said Helena. "If it's still there, and not everyone wants a yellow handbag, you could probably get a bargain." She felt obliged to help her friend save money. "Will you negotiate for me?" asked Amy. Helena laughed. "Of course. You'll be best friends with the maker by then," said Amy. The public were due to arrive in half an hour, and everyone was set up and waiting. Helena had tried a few tentative smiles at her fellow artisans, but hadn't got a lot of response. Then she decided to bring out her secret weapon, her mother's well-filled Tupperware boxes. "I know it's a bit early," Helena said to the creator of the yellow handbag, "but would you like a snack?" The woman, who had deep red hair cut in a very elegant curly bob, looked in the box Helena was holding. "Blessed be the day when we can have a cheese straw for breakfast. Thank you." Everyone Helena offered snacks to was equally grateful. "We none of us had time for breakfast," said one, "so a sausage roll is bliss." "I'll do a coffee run when they're open," said a third, having had 2 cheese straws and a vol au vent. "So sensible to bring food." "It's my mother," Helena explained. "She hardly lets me leave the house without a food parcel. Certainly not her house, anyway. She's a feeder." "I love her already," said the handbag maker, whose name was Venetia. "She's coming, so you'll be able to tell her," said Helena, relaxed and happy now. A slight rumble of conversation was heard. "Oh, to your places! It's showtime!" This was said by a wonderfully camped jeweller, whose pieces made even Helena's abstemious heart beat faster. He was as kind as he was camp, and it made Helena feel extremely welcome. Helena greeted her first potential customer, hoping she didn't have flaky pastry down her front. She had dressed up for this occasion, put on makeup, and tongued her hair into fat curls that fell over her shoulder. She didn't want the effect spoiled by a moment of carelessness. She and Amy had made her stall look great. The loom, which was already threaded with the beginnings of a scarf on it, was now assembled. It was a centrepiece, and all around hung her creations. She put the big mohair blankets, destined for World of Wool, at the back. They were monochrome, but the shades were vibrant, bright yet subtle, and made a very colourful background to her more subtle, and vastly more expensive, silk scarves. "What a lovely stall," said the woman. "I love your scarves. I am a bit addicted," she went on. "My husband says I have the largest collection of them in private hands. How he would know, I have no idea." She frowned. "Unless he found my private stash of them under the spare bed." The woman didn't add to her collection by buying one, but she took a card and promised to keep an eye on her website. Helena was grateful she'd remembered to bring her cards, as she nearly always forgot. They were important, Amy was always telling her. Although she made most of her money through weaving workshops, she did sell things online. But a member of the second group of people did buy a scarf and draped it round her neck. It looked stunning on the woman's rather formal black jacket, giving it the lift it needed.
"What's so good about these scarves?" the woman said, while Helena was processing the purchase. "Is that they do for men and women."
Helena smiled as she handed the woman her receipt.
"True. And what's good about that is," the woman went on, "a woman can buy it for her husband. Men are always so hard to buy for, and then wear it herself if he doesn't appreciate it."
She looked down at the scarf.
"In fact, can you wrap this up for me after all? Alexis has a birthday next week. That makes the scarf practically free." "Do you want a quick whiz round the other stalls?" asked one of Helena's neighbours an hour or so later. "My friend has come and can mind my stall, and it's a shame not to see what other people produce."
"Oh, that is very kind. I was expecting my mother, but she's coming with my brother and his wife, and they're obviously delayed. I'd appreciate a trip to the loo as well, if you're sure." After a quick chat with Amy, whose stall was right up the other end, Helena took her tour of the show. There were some exquisite things to see. Even if one wasn't intending to buy anything, just seeing the skill and beauty of the items made it very worthwhile for visitors. It could be a museum of the future, Helena thought. There was a furniture maker who was an artist in marquetry. His jewellery boxes were like puzzles, full of secret drawers with hidden springs. She instantly thought about Ismene. She would love one of these boxes, and she was so difficult to buy for. Helena considered for a few minutes, and then, although the boxes were way above her normal budget for presents, chose a small oval box. There was a picture of a running horse, and the secret compartment was very well concealed. While she would never be able to spend so much on her niece, Jilly, the ultimate indulgent grandmother, would have no trouble. Having taken up time buying the box, Helena hurried past a violin maker, a glass blower, although not blowing currently, and a ceramicist. Her purchase having been admired and approved by Jennifer, who'd been minding her stall, Helena said, "The standard here is really high, isn't it? I was so lucky to get in."
"But your work is lovely," said Jennifer. "I sold 2 of your blankets while you were away. Cash sales, thank goodness."
She handed Helena a wad of notes.
"Oh, thank you. I'm only here because someone else dropped out." "Was that the woman who made garden ornaments?" asked Venetia from 2 stalls down. "Rather a second-rate artisan, if I may say so." Helena laughed. "As long as you don't call me that the moment my back is turned." "Of course not," said Venetia, horrified. "Your work is of the highest standard. I'm talking casts of gnomes with wheelbarrows and unfortunately placed fishing rods. From the back they looked horribly vulgar." She bit her lip. They were quite funny, though. Reassured, Helena smiled. "Oh, here's my mother." "Will she be bringing more snacks?" said Jennifer. "Quite likely. As I said, she is a feeder." "Excellent. Anything she wants to buy from me, she can have at a discount." But Helena's initial pleasure at seeing her mother, who was with her brother and sister-in-law, was dimmed when she spotted Leo marching across to join the party. He kissed her mother's cheek and stood beside her while they waited for a gap in the throng. Honestly, thought Helena, how many times did she have to tell her mother he was not a good person? But then she noted that her mother didn't look at all happy about his possessive attitude and guessed Leo's presence was something to do with her brother. She wondered whether, if she told Martin what a bad lot Leo was, he'd stop being his friend. But Martin was quite likely to say, "I'll make my own judgments about people, thank you." Carry on as before. Usually, Jilly was delighted when Martin showed any interest in Helena's work. However, today, she'd have very much preferred to go early, on her own, help Helena for a bit, and then go home when she felt she was no longer useful. She hadn't heard back from William, and now felt foolish for having invited him. Cressida even tried to make her leave behind the box of snacks she'd made.
Does she need the empty calories? She'd asked, eyeing Jilly's basket critically as they got in the car. Biscuits are just an evil combination of sugar and fat, and Helena already has a sedentary occupation. Yes, she does need them, said Jilly, possibly more sharply than she'd intended. And she may want to share them with people. Put the basket in the boot, then, said Cressida. It's fine on my knee. Do you mind if I go in front? I have a slight tendency to car sickness if I'm not driving. She kept the cool bag with 3 bottles of Prosecco near her too. Cressida was sure to disapprove of that. Thus she had managed to annoy her daughter-in-law before they were hardly out of the house. Usually she avoided it, but just occasionally she couldn't resist asserting herself. Just a little. Cressida and Martin spent the journey to the exhibition discussing the benefits of private education, not Jilly's favourite topic. Her ex-husband's parents, who liked to be known as Gangan and Pops, cheery names that completely belied their very formal way with their grandchildren, had gone on about private education a lot. They seemed to think that Martin and Helena would have hugely benefited from being sent to a jolly good boarding school where they'll make friends who'll be useful to them all their lives. Martin, rashly in Jilly's opinion, referred to this now. Dad's parents were always sad we weren't privately educated. I know that. Yes, said Jilly. They were of the opinion we should sell the house, my house, and live in a hovel to fund your private education. But that's not the route you're going down, is it? Mind you, I think you're absolutely right. Education isn't only what goes on in school hours. At least half of it goes on in the home, in my opinion. Jilly spent the rest of the journey looking pointedly out of the window. No one said anything else until Cressida noticed an AA sign to the venue. It must be quite a big deal, this show, she said. Good for Helena, getting in. Jilly softened towards her daughter-in-law. By a millimetre. Jilly was buying tickets when Leo came up to her, full of bonhomie and no sign of awkwardness. He kissed her cheek. This is such a lovely occasion, supporting Helena as a family. She was too polite to say, You're not my family, so instead she murmured, Hello, Leo, and smiled faintly. I didn't know you were coming. Helena wouldn't be pleased to see him, even if he was trying to be supportive. Cressida suggested I came. Said how pleased you'd be if I did. Are you pleased, Jilly? Of course, she said, if you buy one of Helena's scarves. She really hoped that he would buy one and not think she'd be pleased for any other reason. She wished she'd heard definitely if William was coming or not, but with Leo here, she'd rather he didn't. Her life suddenly seemed rather complicated. At last they were at Helena's stall. When Cressida and Martin had said hello, Jilly kissed her daughter and handed over the box and the cool bag. Oh, thank you, Mum. My new friends are addicted to your baking. The savouries went down so well this morning. Well, now it's a bit later in the day. You can have a glass of Prosecco to go with the snacks, said Jilly. Hello, Helena, said Leo warmly. I thought I'd come and give you some support. Not that it looks like you need it. Helena's smile was a little tight. It has been really busy. You don't seem to have a lot of stock, went on Leo. I gather it was all rather short notice, so maybe you didn't have time to make enough. I did have loads of stock, said Helena, but I've sold a lot of it. I've had to ask if some people can leave their purchases until the end of the day, so other people can see examples of my work. Goodness me, I was going to buy something for your mother, but I may be too late. It's okay, said Helena, obviously making an effort. I give her anything she takes a fancy to. Now, will you excuse me, there's a gentleman... Jilly took a step back and watched Helena do her thing with a man who seemed very interested. She gave him a business card and he gave her one back. It would be good if that meant he'd commissioned a scarf. Leo wasn't going to order one, she realised. Jilly stepped forward when Helena was free to talk again. Would you like me to take over for a bit? Give you a chance to look around? I had a look around this morning, but a loo break would be good. Leo insisted on standing next to her while Jilly stood in for Helena, and she wished she could ask him to go away. Eventually, she saw William trying to push his way towards Helena's stall. He was quite a way away. If she was quick, she should be able to get rid of Leo. "Leo, would you be very kind and get us some tea? Then we can have a piece of shortbread. I didn't have much lunch."
"If that's what you want,"
he said fondly and kissed the top of her head. She moved away from him, feeling horribly patronised. Then she looked up and felt even worse. William had stopped and was looking at her, confusion on his face. He had obviously seen Leo's possessive gesture and didn't know what to think. She tried to smile reassuringly, but it was difficult to say, "I didn't invite this man. I didn't want him to kiss my head. It's you I'm interested in." In a gesture like a smile, however hard you tried. William raised a hand in greeting and then turned back. Jilly felt bereft. Cressida and Martin came up. "Are you okay staying for a bit, Jilly?" said Cressida. "There's some amazing stuff here. There's a handbag over there that has my name on it. I might persuade Martin I need an early birthday present." After they had gone and Helena had come back, Jilly told her where Martin and Cressida were headed. Helena raised her eyebrows.
"There's nothing on that stall that is cheaper than a month's mortgage payments. I'm glad they're feeling so flush.
The man who makes the leather belts is so nice, and I'd love to buy something from him, but I just can't. Oh, I did buy something that you might like to give Izzy for a present, though. It's way above my budget, but knowing how generous you are..." Jilly looked at the little box that Helena put into her hand. "It's amazing. I love it, and it's perfect for Izzy. I must go and have a look at the other stalls. Would you be all right here for a moment?"
"Absolutely. Take the shortbread. It might get you a discount."
"Oh, here's Leo with the tea," said Jilly, suddenly very depressed. "Oh," said Helena, "I must just pop over to George with the shortbread. I forgot he brought me a cup of coffee earlier. I promised him something if you brought food."
Jilly recognised a quick excuse to get out of the way when she saw one, but was grateful. Leo and Helena together would have made her extremely uncomfortable. "Sorry it took so long," said Leo when he arrived. "There was an enormous queue, and then I met some people I know and couldn't get away."
"That always happens to me," said Jilly, taking the polystyrene cup. The tea in it was tepid, but she drank it anyway. She realised that Helena would be opening the Prosecco soon, and she might well miss the opportunity to share it.
"And I hope you won't be disappointed," said Leo. "But I'm afraid I've got to go. I was intending to stay a bit longer, but something has come up."
Relief made Jilly smile warmly. "Oh no, don't worry about it. It was lovely of you to come at all."
"You'll give my love to Helena, won't you? Tell her how much I like her scarves."
"Absolutely," said Jilly warmly, ignoring the thought that if he liked them so much, he could have bought one. Helena reappeared the moment Leo had gone. "If you really like him, Mum, I will make an effort. It's just seeing him gives me flashbacks to that time we nearly died."
Jilly was aware her daughter really meant the time Leo nearly killed us.
"I don't like him, but Cressida and Martin seem to adore him. It wasn't my idea to invite him to this." She omitted to mention William. Helena had enough to think about. "I should have asked him for a lift home, really, but I couldn't bring myself to. He'd have taken it as encouragement." "We could tell Martin to hurry up," said Helena. "I will if you'd rather not."
Jilly was well aware that Helena thought that Martin and Cressida bullied her a bit, and her daughter wasn't entirely wrong.
"Or Jago could do it," said Helena. "I'm sure he wouldn't mind. I know he's only coming to support me. I gave him one of my free tickets. This is such a brilliant event," she went on. "I've earned far more than my entrance fee, although I have also sold practically everything I've made, so God knows what I'll have to take to Woolly World at the end of the month. I could always give you back all the rugs and throws you've made for me over the years. Not that I don't love them, but..."
Brilliant idea, Mum. I can remake them for you after the show. Oh, and here's Jago. As Jago drove Jilly home in Helena's car, she thought what a nice man he was. Why did she think there was something a bit odd going on between him and Helena? They should be all over each other. Still, she decided, maybe she should sort her own love life out before starting on her daughter's. Chapter 20. The show was over and everyone was packing up when Jago reappeared. Hi. A mate was coming back this way, so I thought I'd drop your car at home and get a lift back with him. I thought you might like a hand clearing up. Where's all your stock? Sold. But Jago, that's so kind. After you've taken Mum home and everything, to come all the way back to help me with this lot. Helena gestured to the loom and other bits of equipment she had used to dress her stall. It's okay. It's what mates are for, said Jago. He started dismantling the loom which, as he'd helped her assemble it when she first decided to move into weaving with silk, he knew how to do. But you must let me take you out to dinner in return, said Helena firmly. I've done so well today, it's the least I can do for you. I was going to have to knock up something out of leftovers for us, so I'm well up for eating out. She smiled. Anywhere you fancy? There's a gastropub I've read reviews of. It's a bit off our patch, so it would be nice to go there while we're over this way. Great. If you know where it is, I'm happy to go. I'll drive, then you can drink. She paused, a large plastic box in her hands. You didn't come all the way over here so you could drive the pickup and not risk it with me for any longer than you had to. No, he said shortly. I have many faults, but I'm not possessive about my pickup. You drive it as well as I do. Helena's heart warmed to him another bit. At this rate, she'd be in love with him before the summer. They found the pub without too much difficulty and went into the bar. If we don't like what's on the menu, we don't have to stay, said Jago. I think we will like what's on the menu, said Helena, looking at it. It's got chips on it, and I think after my long day, I deserve some. Then you shall have chips, said Jago, and a large steak to go with them. He inspected the menu carefully. You can have sweet potato chips instead if you like. No, nothing wrong with sweet potatoes, but if I'm having chips, I want proper ones. They had ordered and Helena was sipping a large glass of red wine when she looked across at a table and then leaned forward so she could speak to Jago privately. I recognise those two men over there, she murmured, shifting her chair so she wasn't facing them. One ordered a scarf from me today. Didn't catch his name, but I've got his card, and I know exactly what scarf he wants. And the other, she laughed, although you would never guess, he has recently run a half marathon with his colleagues. She frowned. Or maybe he was just in the photograph with the runners. It was in the local paper. So you don't know these people in real life, you just recognise them with your superpowers. No, the first one I met. She found her handbag and burrowed about in it until she came up with a card. Here you are. It's him. Jago looked at the card and then at Helena. Really? Yes. Do you know him? Of him? We're in the same business, only he's a massive company and I'm a one-man band. You mean you couldn't afford one of my scarves? Instantly she began planning the design for one she'd make as a present for him. She took another sip of her wine. It was delicious, and she was glad Jago had led them here. How was Mum when you drove her home? She was her usual charming self, but she did seem a bit twitchy. When I asked if she'd enjoyed the show, she said it would have been better if she could have driven herself there, and was annoyed she didn't just change the date for her car being serviced. Oh, said Helena. Martin always arranges for her car to be serviced. Since the divorce. Cars are a blue job, you know. Women can't ring up a garage and make an appointment to have one serviced. Really?
Mum indulges him because it's the only thing he does that's remotely helpful, and she doesn't want to undermine him.
So what's all this colour-coded job thing?
Cressida thinks it's simpler for men if jobs have colours, blue and pink. Cars are blue, doing the online grocery order is pink.
Don't get ideas of it going on between us. I prefer everything to be mauve. Which means?
Whoever has time and thinks of it, does it. She paused. It seems to work okay, doesn't it? She looked at him, wondering how he felt about her, whether he felt anything beyond friendship. He, had come up with the idea of pretending to be an item because it suited them. But supposing one of them, i.e. her, wanted to change, to stop pretending, because she did want them to be a real couple, who touched, who slept together. Annoyingly, they hadn't added a clause to their casual arrangement which told them how to deal with this situation. Supposing now, her inhibition softened by wine and tiredness, she reached her hand across the table and put it on his large, roughened, very slightly hairy one. Would he get her unspoken message? And if he did, would he look slightly horrified and embarrassed? Say, "You're a lovely girl, but I've never seen you like that," or something similar? Helena decided she would die of embarrassment if this happened, and took another sip of wine.
"I think you need another one of those," said Jago. "And here comes the food. Those chips look amazing. Can we have some mayo to go with those?" he asked the waitress. "Thank you so much." The food was as good as it looked, and Helena crunched her way through it, too tired to talk much. That was one of the many joys of Jago. He was perfectly happy to be silent. When she'd finished her steak, she felt a lot better. "Now pudding," she said. "I'm paying, and I'm insisting. I won't feel I've taken you out for dinner if you only have one course and no alcohol." "Oh, right. I'll hop up and get the menu." Having done this, he perused it. "I think steam pudding with custard, cream and ice cream." "I'll join you," said Helena, feeling bold and a bit anxious. "I sort of wish Cressida was here." "Really?" "She'd be so utterly horrified. And although I know it's childish of me, I do quite like horrifying her." He laughed. "I know what you mean. I can't resist shocking my sister either." "Oh, how's Zulika and her kitten?" "The kitten is growing rapidly and is hardly ever out of trouble, apparently. My sister is going to keep her." Helena smiled. She had reason to be very grateful to that kitten. Without it, her first meeting with Jago would have been very different. "So," Jago said, after several spoonfuls of pudding, which included fresh raspberries and was very much lighter than its title suggested it might be. "What are you going to do with yourself now this show is over? You've worked so hard." Helena gave a laugh that was almost a sigh of exhaustion. "I'm going to work even harder. I've sold every blessed scarf, rug, throw and cushion cover, lots of it destined for the big World of Wool show at the end of the month. It's going to be pretty much impossible to restock in time." "Oh, Helly," said Jago, putting his hand on her shoulder. "I didn't realise." "Mum suggested that she give me back everything I'd ever given her, which is something. I'll ask Cressida for her stuff too, but it's not going to be that much." "Can I make a suggestion? I'm not any kind of an artist or creative person. But could you do something weird, huge, that wouldn't take you long? Weaving with rags, that sort of thing." "I'm not a massive fan of rag weaving, but I could think along those lines, cutting up blankets and using them." Her imagination was sparked. "I've got some blankets that got terribly eaten by moths. I should have thrown them away, but I put them in Mum's freezer instead. I could use those." Jago smiled, clearly pleased to have had the original idea. "After all," Helena went on, "although obviously they'd have to be up to standard, I wouldn't have to love them. As long as I had, say, 3 wall hangings, perhaps?" "With found objects woven into them?" "If I was desperate," said Helena.
I've always insisted on things being functional.
Wall hangings are functional if they're hiding an unsightly wall, said Jaco.
He paused.
Are you going to finish your pudding?
Not if I can avoid it. I feel a bit sick. Please. She pushed her bowl towards him. Go for it. She gave a massive yawn as he put down his spoon.
Come on, let's get you home, he said. You're dead on your feet.
Dead in my chair, she corrected him, but smiled. Even if they were just friends, it was lovely to be with someone who looked out for her. I'll just go and pay the bill. She almost fell out of the pickup when they got home. Do you mind if I leave things here in the back, or do you need it first thing?
Don't you worry about it. I'll put it under cover in case it rains. But you get to bed.
She set aside her concerns about keeping their relationship platonic and went to him with her arms open for a hug. He hugged her back, very hard, and it was lovely.
You've done so well today, Helly, he said. I'm so proud of you.
She didn't quite know how to respond to this. And I'm so grateful to you. You've been brilliant, feeding me, looking after me, making it possible to work ridiculous hours. A thought of how resentful her father had been of anything her mother did that didn't involve him floated through her mind. And now I've got to do it all again.
But you will. You'll do something amazing, because you're amazing. Now go in. I'll bring you in a mug of hot chocolate and a hot water bottle shortly.
I can't believe you've got a hot water bottle, she said, utterly amazed at the thought.
I borrowed one from your mum when I dropped her off earlier. She was quite surprised when I asked, but totally understood when I explained why. She gave me a hug.
That is so sweet. Now, I'll have a quick shower and then bed. The hot water bottle was in her bed and the mug of chocolate on the tea chest that was her bedside table by the time she was out of the shower. She realised that if she hadn't fancied Jago at all, she'd still want to marry him and bear his children. And she did fancy him. A lot. Chapter 21. Helena was somewhat surprised to find a text from Cressida asking her over when she finally opened her eyes the following morning. She really needed to get on with her work, but as she was still bone-tired and wanted to ask Cressida for the blankets and throws given to her over the years, she decided to go. She did take the time to attack her hair with straighteners before she went, though, having gone to bed with it wet. She didn't want to arrive looking like one of those dogs who have dreadlocks. She finished her breakfast and had a banana. There was no guarantee of biscuits, or indeed anything at Cressida's house. She planned to visit her mother on the way home. Knowing how many blankets she could come up with before she started would give her courage to jump into another killing work schedule. Cressida was unusually friendly when she opened the door to Helena. "Helena, come in. I'm so glad you had time to come round. But I just wanted to tell you how amazing the show was. I've never seen so many truly beautiful things in one place before. Come in. I've got the coffee on. Martin has taken Ismini to a museum. It's their Sunday treat if we're not doing anything else." Not only was there coffee, but there were gluten, dairy, sugar, and taste-free biscuits on offer. Helena was suspicious. Surely all this wasn't because Cressida had liked the show. Although she knew she would like it. High-end, expensive, and impeccable quality. It was perfect for Cressida's aesthetic taste. "Well, this is very nice," she said, hearing her mother's voice in hers. Cressida gave a self-conscious little cough. "You've probably guessed, Helena, that I haven't just asked you here to congratulate you on your show, which was fantastic." "Yes." "I'm a bit worried about Jilly." Guilt came over Helena like a fog. She had been so immersed in her work that she hadn't been paying any real attention to her mother, beyond accepting meals and biscuits. "Why?" Cressida pursed her lips and searched for words, unlike her, who usually knew exactly what she wanted to say and said it. "I don't know if you're aware, But Jilly's been romantically involved with Leo. Helena nodded. She did know this, or rather, she had known it, but now she thought it was over. I think Jilly senses you're not entirely happy about it, which is probably why she hasn't confided in you. Cressida managed to imply that Jilly had confided in her, which Helena very much doubted. Go on, said Helena, trying to appear dispassionate. The thing is, I know it's difficult when it's your mother, but this could be her last chance of happiness. Leo is really lovely and has an amazing house. She's not getting any younger, and having seen that having a new life with a gorgeous man is possible, you mustn't snatch the dream away from her. I would never do that. At least this was something that Helena could say with total sincerity. Please tell her she has your blessing. She's been behaving strangely lately. You've been so busy you may not have noticed. Guilt swamped her again. I've been working all hours getting ready for the show. I know, and please don't think I'm judging you, but we're family, and if you can't look out for your mum, then I will, and I have. I'm very grateful, muttered Helena, feeling anything but gratitude. And I don't know if you know this, but she said something about going gliding. Gliding? I know, said Cressida. I was horrified too. Imagine Jilly doing anything like that. Even hearing her talking about it was worrying. To be honest, she'd be better off with a man to take care of her. Helena may have wanted to keep things between her and Cressida civilized, but she could not swallow this. That's not very feminist of you. Besides, she's looked after herself perfectly well up to now. You have to remember, said Cressida, as if confiding a great secret, that women's bodies change, hormones kick in, and we can go crazy. Cressida said this in a way that made Helena absolutely confident that this would never happen to her sister-in-law. The way Cressida had said crazy indicated a lack of control that was psychologically impossible for her. Her hormones were far too well disciplined. Remembering she had a favour to ask meant Helena bit back any protest. I'll go and see her. But Cressida, although I am so grateful you've been looking out for Mum for me, I do have another favour to ask you. It's a bit of a funny one. Oh? To give herself confidence, Helena imagined her sister-in-law doing a tough mudder, something that physically she'd be more than capable of, but would she be able to get covered in sludge to prove her fitness? Possibly not. Helena cleared her throat. This is a really odd request. You know I sold absolutely everything I had in the show yesterday. I didn't know. But that's really good, isn't it? Well, yes, but I've got another show coming up really soon and absolutely nothing to put in it. Mum suggested she gives me back all the blankets and throws and things I've ever given her, just so I've got something to display. I was wondering if you'd give me back the ones I've given you too. I can put sold stickers on them if you're really fond of them, but otherwise I'll replace them when I can. A strange look tweaked at Cressida's features. An expression strangely like embarrassment, which was not an emotion that often touched her life. I'm afraid I had a big Marie Kondo session, Helena, and I found they didn't spark joy. They went to the charity shop. Helena caught her breath. Was this recently? Is there any chance I could buy them back? Cressida shook her head. It was when Mari's first book came out, so no. Somehow Helena got herself to the door and out of it, muttering conventional thanks as she went. But inside, she felt kicked in the stomach. And when she'd stopped feeling quite so offended, she felt angry about the waste. From now on, she resolved to only give Cressida and Martin boxes of chocolates, milk tray for preference as presents. Nothing she'd put any effort into. She calmed down a bit by the time she got to Fair Acres and was determined to find out what was going on with her mother. She was still feeling terribly guilty for ignoring her, or at least only eating her food but not actually paying attention. Was Jilly really in love with Leo? And what was all this about going gliding? Her mother would never do that. But first and foremost, she had to tell her mother about Cressida's despicable action. Jilly heard Helena come in through the back door and came downstairs, a bundle of dirty linen in her arms. "Hi, darling. How are you? You did so brilliantly yesterday. I was so impressed." They went into the kitchen and Jilly put on the kettle for coffee. "So what are you grumpy about?" asked Jilly when Helena had pulled out a chair and sat down. "Cressida." Jilly felt slightly anxious. She hated it when her daughter was at odds with her daughter-in-law. She was also a bit worried about what Cressida might have said to Helena about Leo. "What?" "She Marie Kondoed all the woven things I've given her over the years. They didn't spark joy." "Oh, Helly, don't say she re-gifted them." This made Helena smile. "I know how much you hate that expression, but what she did was worse." "Is that even possible?" "Yes, she gave them all to charity, and she did it ages ago, so I can't even buy them back. Don't you think that's rude?" "It is really horrible to have a present you've thought about, and in your case made, but I suppose if they didn't fit in with her decor—" "I knew you'd stick up for her, and to be honest, if I didn't need them, I probably wouldn't be so upset." "Well, you've given me loads of lovely things over the years, and I've still got them all, and most of them have escaped the moths. Although 1 or 2 blankets are—" She paused, choosing her words. "Early work." "Oh, that's fine," said Helena. "Jago had a brilliant idea. I should cut up the early or moth-eaten work and weave wall hangings from them. They'd be quick to do. I told him I liked things to be functional, but he said a wall hanging was functional if it was hiding something unsightly." "I do like Jago," said Jilly. "He was so sweet to me yesterday, and asking to borrow a hot water bottle. Adorable. He is really kind and a great housemate. Although if my next show goes as well as this one did, I'll be able to afford my own place." "Aren't you living together as a couple, then? That's lovely and old-fashioned of you." Helena looked discomfited. "Well, I want to pay my way. I don't want to just latch on to Jago." There was definitely something odd going on. Jilly resolved to find out more. "Here's your coffee," she said. "You must be so tired after the show." "I am. Too tired to be creative, really, so I'm taking the day off." Helena looked at her mother intently, and Jilly realised she'd missed her moment. Helena was going to interrogate her, and not the other way round. "Cressida said she was worried about you." "Why? I promise there is absolutely nothing wrong with me. I've never felt fitter." She paused. "I think I may have lost a bit of weight, although of course I never weigh myself." "You look great, Mum. I don't think it was your physical health she was worried about." "That's even worse. Has she caught me talking to myself? Surely everyone does that." Helena began to giggle. "No, nothing like that. And yes, everyone does talk to themselves, or at least I do." "No," she said. "And honestly, I don't believe this, but although she has her faults, I don't think Cressida lies. She said you talked about going gliding?" Jilly joined in the giggling, hoping it would disguise her blush. "What is Cressida like?" "I knew she was talking rubbish," Helena went on, before Jilly had worked out what to say. "She's more worried about you and Leo." Helena took a breath. "She's worried that because I don't like him, you feel you can't go out with him. She says he's your last chance of happiness, and I mustn't blight the relationship." "Cressida is talking out of the back of her neck," said Jilly firmly. "She's convinced there's something going on between me and Leo, but there isn't." "Oh, well, that's a relief. I would have done my absolute best to live with it if you and he really were in love, but I'm very glad I don't have to." "You don't have to," said Jilly firmly. "But Cressida says Leo might be your last chance of happiness." Helena obviously needed more convincing. "Darling, if I feel lonely, I'll just go on Kinder and find a new man." "Or is Kinder what I read books on?" Jilly was slightly worried that she may have overdone the dotty old lady act. But as this sent Helena into further fits of giggles, She knew it was all right. "Don't worry, Mum. I'd never let you go on Tinder. You'd never know if you had to swipe left or right." But after Helena had gone, Jilly found herself wondering how she'd feel if Helena didn't like William. Would it be as easy for her to think she'd have to give him up because of her daughter? No, she decided. It wouldn't be easy at all. And she might not even try. Chapter 22. Jilly had been making beds, baking shortbread, picking posies, and organising laundry for what seemed like every hour of every day since Helena's show. And while she liked to be busy, she was tired. Also, although she was physically occupied from dawn to well past dusk, her brain was free to worry about William. When she first met Leo, she'd been a bit swept off her feet. He was so stylish and charming, had treated her like a queen, and taken her to lovely places. But when she started to get to know William better, she'd realised how much nicer, kinder, and now she came to think about it, more attractive than Leo he was. William was the quiet horse that came up on the outside without being noticed until he was at the finish line. But was he still interested in winning this particular race? How would she ever find out? If only he hadn't seen her with Leo, she could just invite him round for a meal or something. In fact, she was fairly sure, if he hadn't seen her with Leo, he would have been in touch himself. But she didn't have the courage to email him and tell him she and Leo were not together, when he may not have actually been looking at them at the show. He could have been looking at something quite different. She wished she was braver. Jilly was sure Helena wouldn't worry about things like that. She'd just email William and explain. Thinking about Helena didn't help her either. What was going on between her and Jago? He was such a lovely man. She would be so sad if there was something dreadfully wrong with him that made him ineligible in some way. A thought occurred to her. Could he be gay? It wouldn't be a thing that was wrong with him, of course, but it did make him unsuitable for Helena. It didn't seem terribly likely, but Jilly didn't trust her gaydar. Was his sensitive caring of Helena something you could expect from a man who was heterosexual? Possibly not. Hot water bottles were just a little bit camp after all, however much everyone loved them. But even if he wasn't going to be the father of her grandchildren, Jago was still a lovely man and a very good friend to Helena. She found the thought of Helena having a gay best friend comforting. She was still musing about Jago's sexuality while she made yet another batch of shortbread, wondering at the same time if she had in fact got bored with making the same biscuit time after time, when the phone rang. Slightly hoping it wasn't another booking she could do with a few days off, she went to answer it.
"Darling, Daphne here. How are you?"
"I'm fine, Daphne. How lovely to hear from you. And how are you?" Jilly wiped her hands on her apron.
"In the pink, sweetie. Absolutely in the pink. Now, I've got a plan." Sounds a bit worrying.
Jilly really hoped that if the plan meant her B&B being taken over by a lot of unruly women, she would have time to prepare properly. Daphne ignored Jilly's wary response.
"It's William's birthday soon."
"Oh?"
"Yes. And you know something? He's never had a party. Not ever. In all his life. So I thought I'd organise one."
"What took you so long? He must be in his 50s, said Jilly.
"I just assumed his parents were in charge of that sort of thing. But no, I have to do it now."
"Okay. Well, anything I can do to help?" She briefly wondered if she should offer to have the party in her house, but then decided it would look pushy. If William didn't fancy her, it would be awful, for him and for her.
"Well, you can come, and if it wouldn't be too much trouble, make a cake. I'm sure I could get someone else to make one, but I thought you'd make a much nicer one."
"Of course, I'd be happy to. What sort of cake do you think he'd like? Sponge? Fruit? Chocolate?"
"Actually, what he'd really love is one in the shape of a glider. It's his hobby, you know."
This was a bit of a shock. I'd been thinking of a nice chocolate sponge with his name on it in white buttercream. Perhaps some candles?
Yes, a glider made out of chocolate sponge would be brilliant. Thank you so much, Jilly. I knew I could rely on you.
Jilly's murmured appreciation of Daphne's faith was a bit half-hearted.
It's going to be a surprise party, you know,
Daphne went on. Oh. Jilly's protective instincts broke through her desire to seem helpful and supportive at all times. Are you sure he'd like that? I mean, not everyone has a temperament for a surprise party. She'd been to a couple when the person was obviously not at all happy to have their friends jump out from behind bushes when they were unprepared and not wearing their makeup. William is quite sensitive. That wasn't the right word. It made him sound like a poet. I mean, he's got a quiet personality. There's nothing of the showman about him.
It'll be fine, don't you worry. He'll be delighted. You just get that cake made.
You haven't given me a date.
Oh, sorry. Tuesday next week, okay for you?
Yes, said Jilly faintly.
And I'm arranging a minibus to pick everyone up, so no one has to worry about drinking and driving.
Although she hadn't said as much, Jilly sensed that Daphne felt it was a bit silly to worry about drinking and driving.
Great!
Maybe she could get the cake to the venue beforehand. Otherwise, she'd be stuck in the back of a minibus with the cake on her knees. If it hadn't had to be a glider, she could have put the cake in the special container she'd bought from a party years ago and had used at least twice. As it was, it would be more complicated.
So, I'll be back with all the details soon, said Daphne. Lovely to chat to you. Bye!
Although her response to Daphne's glider cake suggestion hadn't been one of overwhelming joy, Jilly was a little excited at the prospect. She immediately put glider cakes into her search engine and had a look. When her children were small, she used to make amazing cakes in the shapes of pirate ships, ski slopes and mice, and they'd always loved them. She really liked William, so did he deserve anything less than a cake in the shape of a glider? She considered ringing Daphne to find out roughly how many the cake was going to have to feed, but decided Daphne would probably say something vague and unhelpful. No, she was going to go this alone and make William the best cake he'd ever had. Although going on what Daphne had said about him never having had a party, maybe he'd never had a cake either. In which case, it was bound to be the best one. After ordering a couple of enormous cake tins from the internet, she made a list for the cash and carry. She added food colouring to the list of normal cake ingredients. And then she sat down and thought about her gliding experience. What had been so magical had been seeing the landscape from above, in the silence, as if one was a bird. Maybe it would be better to recreate the landscape in cake, from a bird's-eye view, and add the glider later. She looked online again and saw that other cake makers had had this idea. But instead of sitting the glider on the cake, she would suspend it over the cake from the corner. Yes, she was happy. She'd work out the engineering later. She rang Helena. Hi, darling. I know you're busy, but I'm going shopping. Is there anything particular you'd like, or shall I just get what I think you need? Oh, Mum, you read my mind. Jago has done all the housekeeping lately, and it would be wonderful if I contributed something. I'll pay you back. We'll discuss payment later. Shall I drop it round to you, or will you pick it up? I'll wait until Jago goes out and then pop over. It'll be nice to have a break and some company. But it wasn't until a few days after Jilly had rung that Helena finally got over to see her. She knew her mother would have put everything in the fridge and possibly made a lasagna or something as well, with garlic bread. She was also looking forward to a long, hot bath in her mother's bathroom with her mother's bath products. Washing arrangements in Jago's house was still a bit primitive. Although she had kept up her rate of work since the springtime show, she was beginning to lose hope that she'd have enough work to fill a store respectably at the World of Wool. She had a good reputation as a weaver, which meant all sorts of people would go to that event just to see what she was doing these days. There'd be fellow weavers, teachers, potential customers, and just friends. She had to have enough good work, or she might as well phone in sick. This was not something that self-employed artists could ever do. Jago had suggested wall hangings, but she found herself completely lacking in inspiration. She wanted to display work she believed in, even if it was different from what she usually did. She came into her old home through the back door to see her mother frowning at something on the kitchen table. Ulysses the cat was shut in his cat basket. As he quite often slept in there through choice, this wasn't actually cruel, but this time the door was closed. This was unusual. She went over to the kitchen table, on which was an enormous cake. "Mum, what is this? What's it supposed to be?" "Can't you tell? I've had to shut Yuli up in case his hair's got on it." Her mother sounded tired and disappointed.
End of CD 5. CD 6.
Helena looked at the cake a bit more carefully. "Oh, I get it now. It's a landscape from above. And you've put in all the fields and hedges and the river. And the mountains. It's amazing. It's just like when we were little and you made us such brilliant cakes. I love your hedgerows made out of chocolate flakes. I don't like those shop-made cakes that are all smooth and professional, but you know they won't taste nice." "I'm not a big fondant icing fan either," said Jilly, looking more relaxed now. "Look," said Helena, "there's a little caravan. Do you remember the caravan cake you made me for my Sylvanian families? And a duck pond with little ducklings." I did get a bit carried away, I must admit. Once I'd started, I couldn't stop adding detail. "You are so talented. You should enter Bake Off." "It's only a cake. Now, find yourself a towel in the airing cupboard and have your bath. I'll make you an omelette when you come down." "A mummy omelette. Yes, please. Jago's out, or I'd have brought him round for one too." "Has he gone anywhere nice?" asked Jilly. "Just a meeting, I think. He didn't seem overjoyed to be going." "Oh," said Jilly. "You go and have your bath then. I'll see how you're doing before I start cooking." Helena gave her mother a hug before going upstairs. She turned on the taps and went to hunt for a towel in the walk-in airing cupboard. She wanted to find a non-B&B towel so her mother wouldn't have to wash it immediately. And something right at the back on the bottom shelf drew her attention. It was a Harrods carrier bag, and seeing it brought back a flood of memories. She pulled it out and saw that yes, it did still contain what she thought it did. Several old fleeces, dyed in eye-popping colours, rolled together in a felted mass. She'd forgotten about them, but now she remembered the day she dyed them, thinking she was going to spin and then weave them. And here they were, in her mother's airing cupboard, as vibrant as they were when they went in. She got in the bath and lay there, as always her thoughts becoming more creative as the hot water did its work. She thought of her mother's cake. In theory, it was a crazy idea, but actually it was lovely. Why didn't she make a wall hanging of a landscape from above? She could use the fleece. She could do another as a cross-section of a piece of land, like a piece of cake. She realised it had been ages since she'd had a good bit of cake. And the cross-section, starting from the bottom up, could show all the strata and layers of the earth, ending with a hedge and possibly sky and clouds as a top layer. Once she'd worked out a pattern, it should be quick to do. Fleece was lovely and fat. It would take up lots of space. When she went downstairs later, wearing her mother's dressing gown and smelling of her bath products, she was excited. The kitchen was no longer taken up by cake, and a sulky Ulysses now sat in front of the range cooker, the end of his tail flicking with resentment. "Mum, I've had a brilliant idea. I want to borrow your idea of a landscape from above. Wouldn't it be a wonderful wall hanging? And then I thought I'd do a cross-section of the earth too, just a slice, obviously. Once I've worked out what I need to do, it'll be quite quick to make, I think." "Oh?" Jilly held the bread knife over the loaf, waiting for Helena to explain further. "I found that bag of fleeces I dyed when I was in college. They were in the airing cupboard. Not only are they amazingly bright colours, fleece is really fat, and so will take up lots of lovely space. Darling, it sounds brilliant. Omelette coming up. Why don't you stay the night, and then you can have wine with it? And we can watch property porn on telly. I've been working so hard. I've hardly had any time off. That would be lovely. I'll just text Jago to tell him not to expect me home. It was only after Helena had left, following a proper B&B breakfast, that she remembered she hadn't asked her mother whom she was making the cake for. I'm going to be a better daughter when this show is over, she said out loud. Chapter 23. It was the day of William's surprise party, and Jilly was pleased. Everything had gone to plan. The cake looked perfect, and she had arranged to deliver it early. All the clothes she planned to wear were clean, and none of them needed mending. Even her hair had gone right when she'd washed it the previous day. Never a given. Nothing could possibly go wrong. As Jilly felt the complacency was never a good thing, she used her day wisely. She made a shepherd's pie for Helena and Jago. She thought of them as a couple, although she was now convinced he was gay, and dusted all the bedrooms. She didn't make up the beds with fresh linen, as she was expecting her help, a young woman saving to go travelling, in the morning, and it was so much quicker with two. Also, she had to keep reminding herself the minibus was due to arrive at 6:30, which was quite early. You really couldn't be late for a surprise party, she knew. You had to be there before the surprisee arrived. It was just before 6, when Jilly had had a change of mind about what jewellery she should wear and was in her bedroom inspecting her collection, when the doorbell rang. Thinking it was a bit bloody early, and that she would ask the bus to wait, and that her current jewellery would have to do, she opened the door. Instead of a minibus driver, there was an anxious-looking couple in their late 70s. Her heart sank. "Can I help?" she asked, just in case by some wonderful chance they were simply lost or their car had broken down. "We've got here," said the woman, who seemed near tears. "There was a time when I thought we never would. We are booked in here for tonight, aren't we?" Jilly sighed. "Well, I don't think you are, but never mind. I've got room." It took ages to get them settled, and then, because they were too tired to go anywhere else, she made them omelettes and settled them in the guest sitting room with the heater and the television on. Ulysses, recognising a couple of cat lovers, had settled on the woman's lap. The minibus had been and gone, and now she had to drive to the party as fast as she could and hope she got there before William did. As no one was hiding when she arrived and the function room was full of people, she realised she was too late. She went straight to the kitchen to find someone in charge. The cake had been put on the trolley used for wedding cakes. It was being treated with the respect Jilly felt it deserved. It really was a very good cake, and once she had suspended a model glider over the landscape, she was entirely satisfied. "That is an epic cake," said the venue manager. "The detail on it is amazing. We've been admiring it all day. If you fancy becoming a professional, we will be happy to recommend you to clients." "I think I'm happier with an amateur status, thank you," said Jilly, but she was really thrilled at his reaction. "There you are," said Daphne, bustling up in a vision of crushed silk in a bright olive colour that exactly matched the huge glass beads round her neck. "What happened?" "I'm so sorry, Daphne. Some people turned up on the wrong day, and I couldn't turn them away." She was about to add that they were quite elderly, but then realised they were probably the same age as Daphne. "Oh dear, poor you. How awkward. And of course you could never turn anyone away. But you have made the most magnificent cake I have ever seen. I can't decide what my favourite bit is. I think it's the tiny swans swimming on the river." Daphne looked at the cake again. "And you've added a glider. Much more sophisticated than making one out of cake. I don't know what I was thinking of when I suggested that." "I did lots of those sorts of cakes for my children when they were little, but felt you couldn't recreate the lightness of gliding, the flying sensation, if the wings were made with Victoria sponge." Daphne cackled with laughter. "Excellent. You sound like an artist. Oh, you're wearing odd earrings. Is that a thing, or is it a mistake?" "Definitely a thing," said Jilly. her hands flying to her ears to check what she was wearing in them. "It's my artistic rebel streak." She wondered if the earrings were different enough from each other to look as if she'd done it on purpose. While she wasn't opposed to people wearing odd earrings, it had to look on purpose and not just an accident. Hers were definitely an accident. Still, most people wouldn't notice, she was sure.
"Right," said Daphne. "We'll do the cake. Some of the people here need to rush off."
As they followed the cake, being pushed on its trolley by the hotel manager, Gilly asked, "So, how did you find out who to invite?"
"I got William's mother to find his address book, which she did, and posted it to me. I must say, it did seem a little bit old, but it was all I had to go on, so I just invited everyone in it."
"So his bank manager might be here?" asked Gilly, laughing in spite of trying not to.
"If his bank manager loves William enough to come, then he's welcome," said Daphne. "Now, here we are."
Feeling chastened, Gilly moved backwards so she was at the rear of the crowd, which was now gathering round the cake. Daphne found William, took hold of his wrist and brought him forward. Gilly studied him for signs of stress, of being utterly miserable, but he seemed to have risen to the occasion quite well. He always dressed fairly formally, so although he might have had to remove his tie to look party-ready, he did look very nice. Very nice indeed, Gilly thought, and realised she was probably biased. She couldn't help wondering what ruse Daphne had come up with to make him come to the hotel.
"Ladies and gentlemen," said Daphne, "we're all gathered together to wish this young man a very happy birthday. But before we all make a hideous noise singing one of the dullest tunes in history, I think William would like to make a short speech."
William looked around him easily, not rushing to speak, but acknowledging his guests with a smile.
"I think when my aunt said I would like to make a speech, she really means she thinks I ought to make one. Well, I'm not one for speeches normally. I am very glad of the opportunity to thank you all so much for coming. It is really great to have this chance to catch up with old friends, people I haven't seen for far too long." There were cheers and comments that indicated how fond his guests were of William, and then there was the obligatory song. Then Daphne bustled forward again. While she clearly adored William, she didn't really like being out of the limelight. "Now we've got that out of the way, I'd like to draw your attention to this wonderful cake. I think you should all have a good look at it before it's cut."
It seemed to Gilly, who was suddenly overcome with nerves, that everyone with a phone took a picture of the cake. All she wanted was for William to like it, and maybe to say so. Then she could have a quick drink and slip away. She reckoned without Daphne.
"Now,"
Daphne said, brandishing a large knife she had got from somewhere.
"While this isn't a wedding," pause for laughter, "it is an occasion, and this magnificent cake, which I think is a work of art, recognises that. And I'd like to introduce you to the wonderful woman who made it. Gilly."
Gilly's hand was taken, and she was dragged to stand in front of the cake next to William. She gave him an apologetic look and received a very amused one in return.
"Right," said Daphne. "Cut the cake."
The cry was taken up.
"Cut the cake! Cut the cake!"
Someone a bit more officious than the other guests came up with a proper camera and insisted on posing Gilly and William, both pairs of hands on the knife, looking at the camera before the first slice was cut.
"I am so sorry about this,"
said William out of the corner of his mouth.
"This is desperately embarrassing for you."
I didn't realise Daphne had organised a photographer. Gilly was talking out of the side of her mouth too.
"Put your arm around her, William,"
called the photographer.
"That isn't an official photographer," he muttered. "I rather think he was in the gliding club at university. Haven't seen him for about 20 years.
"But he came," said Gilly, remembering what Daphne had said.
"Now, can we get you to kiss?"
called the old friend from the university gliding club. Gilly was expecting William to balk at this, but as the crowd joined in with the instruction, "Kiss! Kiss!" he put down the cake knife, took hold of her chin, and kissed her. She hardly heard the cheers that welcomed this, as she accepted the kiss, which was short, but full of intent.
"I hope you don't mind," said William afterwards. "Our public demanded it."
"I don't mind at all," she said. "One should never disappoint one's public." Daphne was in heaven.
"I am so glad you two have got together. Some people may call me interfering, but I call it helping love along."
Then she moved away quickly, possibly sensing she had gone too far.
"I am so sorry," said William again. "I'll go and explain. It's one thing her interfering in my life, but she mustn't do it to you. I'll tell her you're with someone else."
He started to go after Daphne. It was now or never. Jilly caught hold of his jacket. "No, don't. I'm not with anyone." William stopped and then turned round slowly. Jilly was in agony, wondering if he would be embarrassed and awkward because he wanted her to be with someone. But when she saw he was smiling, her panic subsided. His expression was amused and fond, and she realised, very pleased.
"I'm so glad," he said. "Let's go and find a drink. I don't know about you, but I think it's time."
"Excellent plan," said Jilly. She could pick up her car tomorrow and go back on the minibus tonight. When they both had drinks, William went on a tour of the guests with Jilly at his side. Because they were all friends from a long time ago, along with William's fleet of aunts, no one was surprised to see Jilly. It obviously seemed normal that William should have a woman on his arm. A few inquired about the wedding, asking why they hadn't been invited. But William explained that he and Jilly hadn't been together that long. He patted her arm fondly, a bit possessively, and made her feel she was important to him. She realised how much she enjoyed feeling part of a couple after being on her own so long. Yet being with Leo hadn't given her this warm sense of belonging.
"Well, I think we've talked to everyone," said William after a little while. "It's time for cake."
Alert for this moment, a waiter came up with 2 plates, and they found a sofa to sit on while they ate it.
"It really is the most marvellous cake ever," he said. "I can't believe I actually know someone who is so clever that they could make something so beautiful and so delicious."
"Thank you," said Jilly, pleased.
"I've always felt it shouldn't be a compromise between beauty, well, not exactly beauty, just detail really, and taste. I can't believe anyone would take so much time and trouble to make one for me," William went on. "Daphne explained that she'd offered to get it made professionally, but that you'd insisted on making it yourself." It wasn't quite how Jilly remembered it. Daphne had definitely asked her to make it, but she realised it was all part of Daphne's cunning plan to bring them together. "I do like making cakes. I haven't done one like this, though, since my children grew up. Now I just make cakes to serve to my B&B guests or fundraising events." She paused. "Although, come to think of it, I do make them for Helena." "Not your son?" Jilly now felt a bit mean. His wife isn't a fan of cake. "Oh," said William. "It must be hard to connect with someone who doesn't like cake. For you, I mean. A fellow non-cake lover would find it easy, I suppose." "Shall we have another drink before the minibus arrives to take us all home?" suggested Jilly. "Yes to the drink. No to the minibus. We'll get a taxi." Chapter 24. William tapped his phone a couple of times and then ordered the taxi. "Right," he said. "Brandy while we wait?" "Why not?" said Jilly, thinking briefly about the risk of a hangover, before deciding she was enjoying herself so much any repercussions were worth it. The taxi came, and they both fell into the back. William's fingers intertwined with hers as they sped through the countryside. The taxi was obviously part of a fleet used by William, as no money changed hands before it drove away. He was by Jilly's side at the front door in seconds. "Would you like to come in?" asked Jilly, giggling as of course he had no choice. "Yes, please," said William. "We have to be quiet as I've got B&B guests." They entered the hall. "Would you like another drink or anything?
We can talk in the kitchen." It was only now that the reality of the situation dawned on her. William was here, in her house, without a car between them, although he could always order another taxi.
"What about your bedroom? Could we talk there?"
"Oh, yes."
"Then we should definitely go upstairs, although I don't want to talk."
He paused, giving her time to back out. She didn't have to think about this. She knew what her answer would be. There was no way she was ready to sleep with William. She didn't know him nearly well enough. Also, the preparation sleeping with him would take. The waxing, the exfoliation, the toenail varnishing. It all had to be done. She hadn't had sex since the last time with her ex-husband, which seemed a very long time ago now. It wasn't something that was possible in a worn prima donna bra and a pair of old sloggies. Although she was certain in her mind, her body had different ideas. She heard herself say, "Come on," and she took his hand. When they reached her bedroom, he shut the door behind them and took her into his arms. They kissed for a very long time. "I'm so glad I had the brandy," Jilly whispered as William undid her top. "Or I'd never have the nerve to do this."
"It'll be fine," said William. "Trust me, I'm your accountant."
As the night drew on, Jilly had time to wonder if the characteristics that made William such a good accountant also made him a good lover. Meticulous attention to detail, finding sweet spots in unexpected places, not giving up until every area was attended to. It was a wrench when, before it was even light, William got up and said he had to go.
"The trouble with surprise parties midweek is that they don't always happen at a time suitable for the person the party is given for," he said. "I have a meeting at the other end of the county and I have to go home and get ready."
"I wasn't sure you'd like a surprise party," said Jilly, watching him put on his clothes. "I think they're a bit Marmite. They work for some, but others hate them." William came back to the bed and kissed her.
"I absolutely loved it," he said.
Jilly was down early, ready to make breakfast for her B&B guests whenever they appeared. Usually she would try to get some sort of idea of when they might want to get up the night before, but with trying to get off to William's party, she'd forgotten. Some elderly people got up really early and were ready for breakfast by 7. Others who didn't sleep well sometimes got up much later because they wanted to catch up on the sleep they'd missed in the night. This couple, it transpired, belonged to the latter group. She was grateful for the time to sort out her thoughts. She felt so giddy, so girlish, so, as Helena would put it, loved up. She could hardly concentrate. She was grateful these guests hadn't stayed with her before, so they would think it normal for their hostess to keep forgetting things and to put tomatoes on the wrong guest's plate. They were still eating toast and marmalade when there was a knock on the door just after 10. Jilly rushed to answer it, a smile on her face, convinced it was William, having changed his mind about the meeting. It was Leo. You can't take back a smile, Jilly realised as she looked at him. Nor can you say, that wasn't meant for you. You just have to backpedal as best you can.
"Can I come in?" he asked.
And as there was just enough gap between Jilly and the door frame for him to do so, he entered the house. Jilly hoped she didn't have to ask her guests to rescue her from him, and ushered him into the kitchen. Ulysses would spring to her rescue and shower him with cat hairs if necessary, she was sure.
"Jilly,"
Leo said, holding her hands.
"Every time I try to talk to you, it all comes out wrong. Will you give me 10 minutes of your time?"
"Of course," said Jilly, suspicious and a bit anxious. "Coffee?" Leo sat at the kitchen table in his beautiful suit, eyeing Ulysses the cat, who did seem to have a rescue plan involving the suit and its beauty and his ginger fur. "So, Leo, what can I do for you?" said Jilly, when she put coffee, hot milk and a plate of biscuits down in front of him. He fiddled around with his coffee for a few minutes and then nodded his head towards the dining room, where the sound of knives against plates could still be heard.
Can they hear us?
I doubt it. They both have hearing aids.
Good. It must be such a nuisance, not being able to say what you want in your own house.
I don't find it a problem, said Jilly.
Jilly,
said Leo, taking hold of her hand. She extracted his hand and said, Please tell me what you came to say. I'm going to be called away at any moment.
It's all wrong, you having to do this bed and breakfast thing. But anyway.
He reached for her hand again, but she kept it in her lap.
I don't think before I took into consideration quite how much you love this house.
Maybe not.
So, if we were together, we could live here and not in my house. You'd like that better, wouldn't you?
What? Better than living in your house? It was his assumption that they should live together that really confused her.
Yes, we could live here, in the house you love. How about that?
Well, I do like living here, that's for sure, she said cautiously. While she could, and probably should, have sent him out of her house and her life forever, she was eager to know what his agenda was.
Exactly,
he smiled, as if her living in her house had been his idea all along.
Which is why here is where we'd live.
But what about your lovely house, or your lovely things?
Not important. What's important is your happiness.
Thank you, Jilly muttered, not sure how to respond to this.
Right. Well, the thing is, I don't think I've made it quite clear what I want from our relationship.
Jilly wasn't aware they had one, but didn't comment.
I want to marry you, Jilly. I think we could make each other very happy.
His statement sounded very rehearsed and strangely lacking in passion. Really? Said Jilly. She could imagine Helena's reaction to this suggestion. She wasn't sure Martin and Cressida would be all that delighted either.
I know, and for someone who's always been a bit of a commitment phobe, that's quite a thing.
He smiled, as if he'd given Jilly a huge compliment.
But I realise that while it's what I want, the prospect may be a bit daunting for you.
He smiled again, fond and patronising.
Well, the thing is, I know that women of your age aren't awfully keen on the physical side of marriage.
This was news to Jilly, who had very recent experience of the exact opposite. Oh.
They like affection and intimacy, but not actual, you know.
Do you mean sex, Leo? He seemed a bit embarrassed by her bluntness.
I didn't want to be quite so obvious, but yes.
Oh. Her gaze flicked towards the dining room, willing her guests to want more toast, more tea, or more anything. They did not respond.
We could live here together, a happy, respectable couple, and keep each other company, do things, travel. I could take you to Vienna.
Haven't you cancelled that yet, Leo? I really think you should. He ignored this wifely suggestion.
I can take you to Venice. The world is your oyster.
I'm not sure I like oysters, Leo.
It's a figure of speech, Jilly.
He sounded quite snappy, thought Jilly, and they weren't even married yet. I'm incredibly flattered, Leo, she said, but I don't think we want the same things out of life. So, no, thank you, I don't want to marry you. He seemed stunned.
Jilly, I haven't asked a woman to marry me since my first wife. I don't think you've had time to think this through.
He got up.
I'm not going to take no for an answer. I'm going to let you think about it.
Really, I won't change my mind.
Just think about it. Think about what you're turning down.
Then he got up, pushed his chair back so it made an unpleasant grating sound on the floor, and marched out to the front door, nearly tripping over Ulysses as he went. When the door had shut behind him, nearly, but not quite a slam, Jilly heard something from the dining room. She went in. Her bed and breakfast guests were looking at her. If I'm not mistaken, said the woman, he's the man who tried to swindle us out of quite a lot of money with some surefire scheme or other.
The man's a shower, said her husband. An absolute shower. You did absolutely the right thing getting shot of him."
"Well now," said the woman, much more gently. "We've had a really lovely stay, but we must get on. We have an appointment in town shortly." Gilly was confused. She was convinced by now that Leo was on some sort of commission, that if he persuaded her to sell Fairacres, Martin and Cressida would reward him. But now he appeared to want to live in the house. It was possible he'd realised she wasn't selling, and so felt marrying her, living in her nice house, would give him some status he felt he lacked. She chided herself for being so wet that she hadn't made it absolutely clear how she felt about it all earlier. But her ex-husband had made her fearful of confrontation. Thank goodness she'd done it now. After the couple left, Gilly suddenly felt tired and was clearing up at half her usual pace when William called.
"How are you, darling?"
he said when she answered the phone. She laughed and discovered she was smiling. "I'm well. How are you?"
"Missing you."
"That's nice. I'm missing you too." She thought of her bedroom, her bed still unmade, and how lovely it would have been to go back there with William.
You'll probably be a bit annoyed, but I couldn't help investigating that Leo Simmons. I did it the other day, after I saw him with you at Helena's show."
"Oh?" Gilly was apprehensive. She didn't want William to think that Leo was a close friend, especially not after what her guest had said about him being a shower.
"Apparently, he hasn't paid the rent on that fancy house he lives in for a couple of months. I found out from a client of mine."
"Goodness. Well, that does rather explain one or two things."
"Care to enlighten me?"
"Yes, but not over the phone." She paused, not wanting to seem pushy. "Would you like to come here for supper tonight?"
"I'd love to. But do I have to wait until supper time? Could I come after work? I'd bring some work with me and stay out of your way until it's time to eat."
"That would be lovely. What's your favourite pudding?" "I'm only asking about pudding because I don't want to spoil you too much."
"Crumble. For me, always crumble."
"Excellent." She paused and then rushed on. "I can't wait to see you again, William."
"Nor me."
It took them a long time to end the call, but afterwards Gilly found she'd stopped worrying about seeming too forward. She realised she felt completely confident that William loved her and wouldn't let her down. Chapter 25. Helena came through the back door as usual, eager to see her mother. She was looking forward to a bath and some telly and an early night in her own bedroom while Jago was out. But her mother wasn't alone. In fact, as Helena looked around her, she instantly spotted things were not as she expected. The little table by the window in the kitchen was covered by a cloth, and there were candles. Sitting at it, now half rising from his seat, was her accountant. Really? Did they make house calls? Was her mother's financial state so bad that he needed to come round after office hours? Her mother was greeting her, making welcoming noises, although Helena began to realise she was far from welcome, and that she really shouldn't have turned up without warning. "Oh, Mum, I'm so sorry, I'll go away again. I didn't mean to interrupt. Jago's watching something over at his friend's house, so I thought I'd come and have a bath. I really should have asked." She felt overcome with embarrassment, although at least this time there were no flashbacks to when she and her mother nearly got killed on the road. "Darling, don't be silly," said Gilly. "You know you're always welcome. Have you eaten?"
"If not, I recommend the crumble. It really is delicious," said William.
"Mum is really good at crumbles," said Helena, trying not to look hostile. She didn't feel hostile at all, but after her reaction to Leo, she worried that her mother would assume she hated anyone Gilly went out with, or had an intimate little supper in the kitchen with even.
"And cakes," said William. "She made me the most amazing birthday cake, a bird's-eye view of the landscape with a glider hovering over it."
"Oh, I saw the cake," said Helena, privately cross with herself for not asking at the time who it was for. "It was brilliant. It actually inspired a wall hanging I'm doing for a big show."
"Why don't you sit down and have some crumble and a glass of wine and tell us about it?" said Jilly.
Helena realised her mother was constitutionally incapable of turning away a potentially hungry person. Cooking and feeding people was so important to Jilly that Helena wondered if it was a way of compensating for her unhappy marriage and subsequent divorce.
"I'll just have a quick bath if that's okay." "I made a spare crumble for you anyway," said Jilly. "Oh, Mum, you're so kind." "I know Jago likes my cooking," said Jilly, as if achieving this situation was somehow challenging. "Who wouldn't?" said William. "You'd be surprised," said Helena. "Not everyone appreciates Mum's skill with butter and sugar. Now, don't let me disturb you any more. I won't be long."
As she went up the stairs, Helena realised that in spite of her cheery words, she was in a state of mild shock. Coming home to find her mother entertaining a man was the last thing she ever expected. And while she didn't disapprove of her mother having another man friend, really quite soon after she'd got rid of Leo, now she'd had a few moments to get used to the idea. William was her accountant. Wasn't that a bit odd? Was it even legal? And making him that cake? She knew her mother loved baking, but would she go to all that trouble for someone she didn't care about? No, not even Jilly would do that. And she deserved all the happiness that came her way. No, it was fine for her to go out with whoever she liked, as long as they'd never nearly killed them in a car. Up in the bathroom, she was pleased to see her mother had stocked up on her favourite bath oil, and there were a few candles around the edge of the bath. Helena was about to light them and luxuriate, when she suddenly wondered if her mother had planned to light them at another time, when she was not alone. Helena had a quick bath, without candles, and then got out and dried herself briefly before pulling on her clothes again. She had to get out of the house as quickly as possible. To her relief, her mother was alone in the kitchen when she got back down. She was wrapping foil round a Pyrex dish. "Oh, God, Mum, I'm so sorry, interrupting your evening like that," said Helena. "I really should have called." A horrible thought struck her. "He hasn't gone home, has he? William, I didn't drive him away." "No, darling, he's just getting a fire going in the sitting room. I know it's spring and all that, but it's really quite chilly." "Oh, that's all right. I would have hated to ruin your evening completely." "No, darling, it's fine, and you don't have to rush off." Jilly's words said one thing, her body language quite another. Helena was fairly fluent in mum by now. "Yes, I do, but I will certainly take the crumble. You know how much Jago loves your cooking." Then she realised her mother had said this earlier. "While we're talking about Jago," said Jilly, pausing in her foil manipulations, "I just want to say, while it's sad he won't be the father of my grandchildren, he's still a really lovely friend. I don't think you should have to worry about people knowing he's gay. There's no shame in it, or even embarrassment." Helena took a breath. Her mum thought Jago was gay, and while she had never thought it before, she suddenly wondered if Jilly was right. Of course not. "I think he's far too nice to be heterosexual," Jilly was saying. "Although William is very nice too, and he's certainly—" "It's okay, Mum," said Helena quickly. "I think William is lovely, but I don't think—" "You don't think Jago is gay?" Jilly had that sad but loving expression that parents take on when they tell you your goldfish has died. "Darling, he borrowed a hot water bottle for you. I can't think of any straight men who would be so thoughtful. Can you?" "Mum, I knew there was something not quite normal between you. I didn't know what until it suddenly hit me. And while in some ways it is sad, as I said, he is so very handsome, and the babies would be gorgeous. As long as he's happy and—" She paused. "I assumed you knew. You must be disappointed." Helena didn't know what to say. She only knew that she needed to find out if her mother was right as soon as possible. "Can you give me the crumble? I'll sort this out with Jago in the morning." "You don't want to stay the night?" "Certainly not. You're with your accountant. You probably want to talk business." Jilly laughed. "Well, off you go now, and get in touch in the morning, or when you've had a chance to talk to Jago. but the friendship is the important thing. The thought that Jago might be gay had never crossed her mind before, but now it began to make sense. She drove home thinking back on their friendship. Who else would offer so much with no strings? It was his idea to pretend they were a couple to get everyone off their backs. Why would he do that if there was no reason? Maybe he hadn't come out yet. Well, she'd ask him the moment she saw him in the morning. She was surprised to see his pickup in the yard. She thought he'd intended to stay over with his friend. Another possible indication of his sexual preferences, she realised now. But the sight of it strengthened her resolve to speak. No time like the present. And she was armed with a crumble and a carton of clotted cream. The timing was perfect. Jago was in the kitchen making a hot drink when she arrived.
Hey,
he said, obviously pleased to see her.
I thought you were going to sleep over with your mum.
I thought you were going to sleep over with your mate. Now the thought that Jago was gay was in her mind. Helena couldn't get rid of it. And yes, she was horribly disappointed at the thought.
To be honest, he's so heartbroken about his girlfriend leaving, he just wanted to get drunk, and I wasn't prepared to have a hangover along with him. I'm really sorry for him and all that, but friendship only goes so far. I found I just wanted to get back.
He paused.
What's your excuse?
Helena went to the cupboard to find some bowls. Make me a cuppa, and I'll tell you. Mum sent crumble and clotted cream for us.
God, I love your mum, said Jago, and flicked on the kettle.
She's very fond of you too, said Helena. Then, deciding it was best to get it over with, she went on. In fact, she thinks you're gay.
At first, Jago seemed confused and then amused. Why on earth would she think that?
Because you're so nice, said Helena, having filled the bowls.
Well, I can't deny I'm nice, but I'm not gay. If I was gay, why would I keep it a secret? Here's your tea.
So you're definitely not? She put down the crumble and handed Jago a spoon.
Definitely not.
Oh, okay. Helena felt stupid now.
Jago picked up his spoon and then put it down. Will your mother stop making me crumbles if I'm not gay?
Helena began to see the funny side. I don't think so. She said you would have fathered gorgeous babies, so she'll take the news well. In fact, Jilly had referred to him fathering her grandchildren, but Jago didn't need to know that.
That's a relief. I'd have been very sad if my hormones cut me off from your mum's amazing cooking.
Talking of hormones, said Helena, keen to change the subject. She was feeling such a fool. Let me tell you why I didn't stay the night. Mum had a man there.
Not the creepy bloke Leo.
No, it was her accountant. They've known each other forever, but I didn't know there was anything going on between them.
And it wasn't just a friendly business dinner?
I did wonder that for about 5 seconds, but even if they were friendly, she wouldn't give him dinner unless there was something else. And actually, the look he gave her, he's very smitten.
Cool. She's an attractive woman, your mother. It's nice she's got a bloke who's into her.
Jago, this is my mother we're talking about.
Everyone is entitled to a private life. Even gay builders.
But you said you weren't gay.
Would you like me to convince you just how ungay I am?
Helena realised that, yes, she would. She stood up. He stood up. How would you go about that then? He came round to where she was standing and put his fingers round her face. He tilted her face upwards.
Like this,
he said firmly, and kissed her. After a while he said,
if you're not convinced by now, there are other things I could do to show you.
Helena pretended to think about this. Actually, I don't think I am quite convinced.
I would really hate for you to be in any doubt. Whose room? Yours or mine?
Yours, said Helena. Bigger bed. Later, Jago came down to fetch the crumble. They ate it in bed, before Jago did a bit more convincing. William and Jilly sat on the sofa, in front of a fire that was more for effect than heat. It was very pleasant, but Jilly was starting to get a bit impatient. She yawned. William, who had his arm round her shoulder, took it off.
I should be going. It's late.
Must you? Jilly was disappointed. For once, I haven't got any guests.
Well, not if you don't want me to, said William at once. I didn't want to presume you'd want me to stay.
It wouldn't be presuming, William, she said. It would be lovely.
You know, I never dreamed I'd find such happiness again after my wife died, said William. I have had girlfriends, of course, but they've never come to anything. Most of them tried to persuade me to give up gliding. This time feels very different.
It does to me too, said Jilly, and I love gliding.
I know you've had other offers.
Please, don't remind me.
Then I won't. But let's not tell Aunt Daphne that we've got together just yet. I think it would be very bad for her to think her matchmaking worked so quickly.
She will be pleased, though, said Jilly.
Delighted, but she'll become power mad and think she can reorder the universe.
If anyone can, it's Daphne. She took a breath. Now, let's go upstairs. In the very early morning, when William got up to go, bringing a change of clothes would have definitely been presuming, he insisted. Jilly looked at her phone. There was a text from Helena. Jago definitely not gay. Love, H. Jilly settled back into the pillows, deeply satisfied. If there ever were any, the babies would be adorable. Chapter 26. Helena didn't rush to push her newfound happiness in her friend Amy's face. Of course she would tell her, but Amy had been away, and the time to share this news wasn't now. Especially as the man Amy had had her eye on last month had not been interested in her. The perfect time would be when they were holed up in their favourite regular Airbnb after the first day of World of Wool. She'd wait until they'd sunk half a bottle of wine and then tell all. On Friday evening, they drove down together in Helena's old Volvo that could pack everything in, as always exclaiming over the beauty of the countryside, debating and arguing the best way to get to a little corner of Wales that had no obvious route, and getting excited when they finally arrived at the Airbnb. Setting up the next morning was always fun, as, unlike at springtime, they shared a stall. When they first arrived at their allocated spot, they always felt they'd never make their stall look attractive, and yet somehow they always managed it. It was Helena's job to go on the first coffee and bacon butty run, finding the stall by following her nose, and she always came back with bits of news about who was there already and who was expected, along with their breakfast. This time was no different, and the show promised to be busier than ever. "Well, that was an amazing day, wasn't it?" said Amy, as at last they unlocked the door to their little home for the night. "Best ever, I reckon." "I think it was." Helena walked straight into the kitchen and found glasses. "Do we need a corkscrew?" she asked. "There's one just here." "You know I always buy wine with proper corks, or we'll lose the cork oaks," said Amy, but without emphasis. They were dog-tired but happy. When they both had wine and their ready meal was heating up in the microwave, Helena set to lighting the fire. It was one of their rituals, and today they needed it more than in some years. Although it was late spring, according to the calendar, the nip in the air said different. "I never know if we do this show to display our work or catch up with our mates or both," said Helena, snapping twigs and piling them up carefully. "Definitely both," said Amy. "It's so great being in our own tribe, surrounded by like-minded people who get us." "Yes," agreed Helena. "It's relaxing not having to pretend we're something that we're not. I loved doing posh springtime, and we both made lots of money, but I felt a bit out of my depth. I'm an artisan, not an artist. The guys there today were all the same. Even if some of them look a bit as if they've spun and knitted themselves." Amy was being provocative on purpose. "You've always been a bit more tolerant of the complete yoghurt knitters than I have." In spite of Amy's occasionally snippy remarks, she had a heart of gold. Helena often thought the snippiness was partly to disguise her kindness. When she was confident her fire wouldn't go out, Helena flopped back onto the sofa and picked up her wine glass. "So," she said, "what was the best thing you saw today?"
"I'll tell you what the worst thing was. That blanket that looked as if it was literally made out of what was picked up from the cowshed floor," said Amy. "But I did love that alpaca stuff. Such fine wool. I must get hold of some and give it a go. And did you see Elaine? Isn't she looking great these days? She's definitely better, fatter." They chatted on about the various people and projects they had seen, what was new and what was boringly the same. "I must say, I was relieved that my wall hangings went down so well," said Helena, having stirred the beef and dumplings and put it on for a few more minutes. "I was quite nervous about them, I must say. My work is usually far more ordered than that." "They work very well artistically, and I love the great chunky bits of fleece in them." Amy frowned. "Where did you get the idea from?" "Can't I ever have invented anything? Do I always have to have got the idea from somewhere else?" "I'm sure your brain is a simmering mass of inspiration, but I'm sure you said something about cake that I didn't understand." Amy got up to find bowls into which she put the stew. She carved 2 huge slices from a loaf they'd bought at the show and put thick slabs of Welsh butter on them. She brought it all over and set it down on the coffee table. Helena opened another bottle of wine. It was going to be that sort of night. "Yes, it was a cake my mother made for her boyfriend. I admit it." "What? Jilly's got a boyfriend?" "Oh, the silver fox my mum saw her with at the opera. That's great." "No, not him. He wasn't such a great catch, it turned out." Helena went on to explain what was wrong with him until Amy was convinced. "So, tell me about this other boyfriend." "Well, he's her accountant, so they've known each other for years, but have only got to know each other properly just recently. The cake was for a surprise party his aunt gave him. It was a bird's-eye view of what you see when gliding, apparently. Mum suspended a glider over it. I saw the pictures as well as the cake, and then I got the idea of doing a cross-section of the Earth. Well, they looked amazing, and you produced quite a lot of other work, considering you cleaned yourself out for springtime." "That was because Jago was so amazing at looking after me, so all I had to do was work." She paused. "I couldn't have managed without him." "I know you've been pretending you're a couple. Don't think you can pull the wool over my eyes, excuse the pun. But are you really a couple now?" Amy sounded wistful. "Yes." Amy nodded slowly. "Are you sure about this? Obviously you've had boyfriends, but you always said they were just a bit of fun, and it was only very recently you said you didn't have time for men." "It's amazing what you find time for when you fall in love." There was a long silence. "So Jago's the real deal? The one, etc., etc.? "Yup." To lighten the mood a little, she added, "And in case, like Mum, you were wondering, he is definitely not gay." "Jilly thought he was gay? Oh, that's adorable. Why?" "Because he borrowed a hot water bottle for me. She told me she thought hot water bottles were camp." "That's so sweet, and so like Jilly." "I know." They sat in silence for a little while, sipping their wine. "So, Ames, how was your holiday?" Amy had been on a yoga retreat, her unspoken agenda to find a man with a perfect and very supple body. "Lovely, inspiring, a real break, but man-wise, a total failure. There was this lovely guy on the course, but there were more lovely women, and he picked one of them." "Oh, Amy, I am sorry. So you're perfect, hot water bottle borrowing, hot sex machine. I never said that. Hasn't got a non-gay best friend, has he?" Helena laughed, relieved to hear her friend wasn't too cast down by her failure to snag a yoga expert. "Well, now you come to mention it, his best mate from forever, who I still haven't met, is newly single. You might be just the person to make him happy again." "I might be. Now tell me all about him." Helena realised she'd made an error. She knew very little about James apart from his name and that he and Jago went way back. She also knew he liked football and lager. neither of which was going to make him sound attractive to Amy. To be honest, I don't know anything, hardly anything, except he's a mate of Jago's. Men do sometimes have very peculiar friends, and if they're not peculiar, they can be quite ugly. They can. So, we look him up on Facebook, said Amy. Where's my laptop? There were an awful lot of people with the same name as Jago's friend, so Amy suggested they look up Jago. In fact, she had done it almost before Helena had realised her intention. Helena wasn't really happy with what Amy was doing. It felt like prying. She and Jago had no secrets between them, and somehow looking him up on Facebook without asking felt wrong. But she knew an open objection, or a protest that she didn't want to, would just encourage Amy in her investigations, so she yawned instead. I don't know about you, Amy, but I'm done in. Can we do all this detective work tomorrow, or maybe when we're back home? We've got another very long day tomorrow, and then we have to drive home. Oh, said Amy, looking disappointed. I expect you're right. And tomorrow is another day. You might meet the man of your dreams, IRL. In real life, Helena added with emphasis, just in case Amy was too tired to understand the initials. Yeah, right. I can meet a sheep farmer who knits his own hot water bottle covers out of old birds' nests. How sexy is that? I think that could be perfectly sexy. But right now, I need a shower and bed. She also wanted time alone, so she could think about Jago, uninterrupted. The following day was similar to the first. There was lots of meeting up with old friends, as well as new people coming along, asking tentative questions. Amy and Helena decided to arrange a few more workshops, as so many people seemed keen to learn from them. They also wanted to know how to create the wall hangings Helena had made, principally because they were relatively quick to make, compared to the gossamer fine silk scarves she had produced for springtime, which looked so beautiful and took so long. As they'd sold everything except the wall hangings that had attracted so much attention, they decided to pack up early. Helena was longing to get back to Jago, although she didn't confess this to Amy. It didn't seem fair when Amy had no one. Helena had always felt perfectly contented without a man in her life. She hadn't felt incomplete or in need of validation or lonely, but now she had found love. She'd stopped pretending it was anything other than love. She felt this incredible happiness. And while she appeared to be the same, a normal, hard-working woman, in her head she thought of nothing but Jago. She hadn't believed such love was possible, at least for her. And because she was so happy, she wanted Amy to be as happy. And so she resolved to introduce her to Jago's friend James as soon as she could. It was unlikely they would be as perfect for each other as she and Jago, but they might go on a few enjoyable dates. It could be fun for all of them. Jago must have come out of the house the moment he heard Helena's car arrive in the yard. It was 9 o'clock at night. Helena had taken Amy home on the way back from the show, and she was exhausted. But her heart lifted the moment she saw Jago's frame coming towards the car. She opened her window and he leaned into it, as if he wanted to pull her out through it into his arms. His kiss, his smell, the feeling of his cheek rough against hers, made her weak with longing. "Let me get out," she protested, frustrated by the limitations of their situation. She almost fell into his arms, and he held her so tight she couldn't breathe. She didn't want to breathe. She just wanted to stay in his arms forever and ever. But eventually she pulled free. "Maybe we should get into the house." "Of course," he said apologetically. "It's just I've missed you so much. Are you hungry?" The kitchen was warm and full of savoury smells, and Helena realised how happy it made her just to be in it. "I know this isn't the most top-end finished kitchen in the world," she said, "but it's welcoming and spacious, and I wouldn't want to be anywhere else." "Oh, that's a shame," said Jago, taking something out of the oven. "I was hoping there were other rooms in this house that you like." She smiled at him, hoping she didn't look quite as soppy as she felt. "I like lots of rooms." "Just as well. Now you sit there. I'm about to feed you and give you wine." "Amy and I drank a bit too much last night," said Helena, taking the large glass he offered her. She took a sip, but it wasn't anything like as nice as this.
This is a special bottle, to celebrate your return.
Jago, I was only away 2 nights.
I know, but I missed you. Now, how hungry are you?
Very. As they ate, they discussed the show.
So it was a success? Worth all the work?
Said Jago, dipping bread into the gravy of the chicken tagine. Absolutely. Loads of old friends came to see us, and enough new ones to make doing a few more workshops definitely worthwhile.
How do the wall hangings go down?
Brilliantly. Everyone loved them, and lots of people want workshops to learn how to make them, which will work well, as they are comparatively quick. She put down her fork. They didn't actually sell, of course, but hey.
Jago laughed. Tell me when you've nearly finished. I have a surprise for you.
A nice one?
I think so.
Well, I don't think I can eat much more. I'm too tired.
Pudding? Sticky toffee? Bought the best brand?
Not now. And I was brought up to believe that sugar at bedtime made me hyperactive.
Jago laughed again. Maybe I should force feed you some.
I'm sure that's not required, said Helena primly, looking up at him, no longer caring if he could tell exactly how much in love with him she was. He went over to the kitchen timer.
I've set it for 10 minutes. When it rings, you're to come upstairs. Tell me when you're on the landing.
Supposing I fall asleep while I'm waiting?
The timer will wake you, and if it doesn't, I'll come down and pour cold water on you. There's a crossword there I haven't been able to finish. Do that to keep yourself awake.
Helena felt she might have nodded off for a few moments, but as Jago had predicted, the timer woke her. She got up to turn it off, and then, as instructed, went up the stairs. I'm here!
Jago appeared. Now shut your eyes. I'm going to guide you.
He put his hands on her shoulders.
Now, about 3 paces forward. Now to the left.
She went where she was directed and was suddenly hit by warm, moist air, smelling of lavender.
You can open your eyes now.
She was in the bathroom, but where before there'd just been a shower in the corner and not much else, now there was a bath full of hot scented water, and around the bath and on every surface were candles. There was no other light. Oh my God, this is so beautiful, she said.
It took me all weekend to put the bath in, but I was determined to do it for you.
But I thought you had a big job you had to finish.
I have, and I will finish it soon. But this took priority. Do you like it?
I absolutely love it, but I feel guilty that you took time away from your work to do this for me.
As they say in the adverts, you're worth it.
She put her arms round his neck and pulled down his head so she could kiss him. Thank you. So much. You are so kind.
Let me add to my kindness and help you get your clothes off so you can get in, said Jago.
Only if I can help you with yours. Eventually, they had to get out of the bath, as the water was cold, but Jago had found somewhere to heat a huge bath sheet that he wrapped round her. Then he picked her up and carried her to his bedroom. He lowered her to the bed, and she had time to notice that there were clean sheets, dried in the open air, before he joined her. She felt she had never been so happy before in her life, and certainly never had she been so in love. It wasn't until they were having breakfast the next morning, early as Jago had to go to work, that Helena remembered to ask him about James. Amy is desperate to meet your newly single friend. Do you think he'd be up for that? She didn't add that being so happy herself made her want to spread the joy. He finished his mouthful, looking at her thoughtfully.
Actually, my single friend is longing to meet you too. He wants to check you out, make sure you're good enough for me. And Amy's a nice jolly girl. I'm sure they get on well.
A jolly girl? You think Amy is a jolly girl?
Anything wrong with that?
Not really. It's just not very... I don't know. It's not how women like to be thought of.
Jago shrugged. Nothing wrong with jolly, he said. Currently, I'm too besotted by another woman to be able to see her best friend as sexy or beautiful or any of those things. She is pretty, though. I'll give her that. Big of you. Do you want the marmalade? Please.
So what should we do? Have them both to dinner? She chewed her lip at the thought. It would be rather high pressure. He shook his head.
Let's keep it low-key. James will want to get a good look at you. He's quite protective of his old mucker. And I think it would be better if we went to a nice wine bar that does food, so we can stay on and eat if we want to, but all go home early if it's a disaster.
That sounds great. No cooking or tidying involved. He gave her a heart-stopping grin.
I think in American films in the 50s they called it double dating.
Helena giggled. And me and Amy can go to the powder room to compare notes halfway through and say, I don't fancy yours much.
Perfect. I'll ask James. But if he says yes, can I leave it to you to set up? Find somewhere nice. I've got so much on.
Of course. I'd like to do that.
You are a wonderful woman. Do you know that?
Then he gave her a toast and marmalade kiss and went to work. A little later, Helena decided to go and see her mother. Gilly would want to hear about World of Wool anyway, and because she was Helena's mother, she'd have to put up with hearing how wonderful Jago was. But she was going to call first and make sure it was convenient. Mum, only me. Can I come over? Of course you can, darling. But why are you asking first? You know why, Mum. I didn't want to disturb you if you had a friend with you. I'm quite alone at the moment. It occurred to Helena that her mother sounded particularly upbeat and cheerful. Was it possible that she was in love too? Was she and her mother about to compare notes on their beloveds? The thought gave her mixed feelings. She was delighted, of course. But really, you didn't want to think about your mother. Any parent, really, having a sex life. It was weird. Helena had never thought she'd feel about anyone as she felt about Jago. She didn't believe in that kind of love. But here she was, on cloud 9, mentally skipping about in the sky. For her mother to be in the same condition was just a bit mind-blowing.
End of CD 6.